Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. It is Monday, April 6th, 9:15 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Local time here in Oklahoma City. I'm at my house if you can't tell. I'm at home. So, I'm going to do a load board video and who knows what we'll ramble about. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with, the Iran situation, the economy, the freight market, the fuel prices, this global supply chain. There's a tremendous amount of stuff to talk about, but there's also a lot of stuff to talk about with the loads. And I haven't done a load board video in a while, so this load board video, I'm actually going to be mainly talking about the loads. We may talk a little bit about the Iran stuff, but mainly talk about the loads. So let's get started on it. And just as a preface, I don't come into these videos prepared. I haven't already looked at the load board. I don't have like a bullet point or anything I'm following. This is just completely improvisation. We're just doing it. We're doing it live. So let's flip over. Which one of these? Is it this one? I think that's the one. We'll see. We'll see if it has. Right now, I can't tell if it has the blur effect over where it's supposed to be at. So this is the number of trucks that are active. The number of active trucks, not the number of people, and not the total number of trucks. This is the number of active trucks at Landstar right now. And let's refresh. Let's get the truck count. 7653. It's still 7653. This changes constantly. So I could sit here for 10 minutes refreshing the truck count, and this would likely change multiple times over 10 minutes. 7653, I think the last time I checked this a couple months ago, it was around 7,300. So it looks like the truck count is going up or maybe stabilizing. To put it into some kind of context, whenever I first signed on with Landstar in like May or June of 2021, Landstar was up around 14,000 trucks in their fleet. So their fleet size is almost half what it used to be just a few years ago. Their fleet size has shrunk dramatically. And I just try to keep an eye on that. So let's close that. And now let's look at this. This is what the main page of the Landstar capacity portal looks like. This is their new beta load board. New. They've had this beta load board almost the entire time that I've been with Landstar. It's been like 5 years that I've been with Landstar, and they've been working on this load board the whole time. It's still in beta, still not released, and it's still not very good. It still has a lot of issues. So these are the average rates and the number of loads in various markets. This information doesn't mean a lot without context. So the average rate per mile, it is my understanding that the average rate per mile is based off of loads that are actually booked. It's not based on what's listed on the load board. It's based on loads that are booked. I don't know that for sure. That's just what I heard. So it looks like the rates have come up quite a bit. Look at the Los Angeles market. The average rate per mile is 355. Like the average rate per mile that people are booking loads at is 355. Now, something I have to explain to all of the people who have never watched one of my load board videos before, all of the prices, all of the prices that you see on Landstar's load board are the full rate. It's not what I get. I get 65% of the line haul and 100% of the fuel surcharge. And normally that comes out to about 70%. So if you see something on here, this $3.55 a mile in LA, what does that actually mean that for me? 3.55 times 0.7. That would be $2.48.5 per mile. We'll say 250 a mile. 250 a mile. For those of you who don't understand the trucking business, $2.50 a mile for an average owner-operator, dry van, truck driver like myself, $2.50 a mile is really awesome. If you can average $2 a mile, you're doing really well. Because for people in my position, your average expenses are going to be about $1.75 a mile. That's if you have a truck payment, an average truck payment. You have average costs for like bookkeeping, tax services, ELD equipment rentals, and subscriptions, and registration. The list goes on and on and on for all your expenses, fuel cost, all that stuff. And then on top of that, one of the biggest expenses people forget about is paying the driver. Even if you're an owner operator, you still have to pay the driver. What are you going to pay yourself? 60 cents a mile is a pretty standard price to pay yourself. If you're paying yourself 60 cents a mile, that should be enough for you to cover your rent or mortgage, your car payment, your insurance, your clothing, your food costs, all that stuff. If you don't factor that into your cost per mile, then how are you going to eat? How are you going to pay for your rent? Like a lot of people forget to factor that in. So when I say the average cost for an owner operator is around $1.75 a mile, a lot of people get really defensive. And they're like, my operating cost isn't anywhere near that high. If your operating cost is that high, then you don't deserve to be in this business. You don't know what you're doing. You're a moron. Well, actually, I think you're forgetting some stuff in your operating cost if you think that $1.75 a mile operating cost is ridiculous. So how do these rates, like, so $2.50 a mile is really good, but how does that factor in with these really high fuel prices? First of all, how high are the fuel prices? I just checked fuel prices while I was waiting for my Uber this morning. I dropped my car off at the body shop this morning. And I checked fuel prices in California. Diesel fuel prices are approximately $8 per gallon. $8 per gallon pump price. That's not what I pay. That's not my price after discount. I don't mind mentioning what I pay after discount. I don't mind telling people what my discounts are. But if you're not driving for Landstar, you don't have access to those discounts, and not everybody's getting $1 a gallon discounts. Most people are getting like a flat 15 cent per gallon discounts. So let's talk about the pump price. So around $8 a gallon in California. What was it in the Portland area? The Portland area, I think, was $7 a gallon. Let me double check. Sorry, it won't even let me click off of this. Advertisements from using Uber. The Uber app is now spamming me with advertisements. I cannot stand apps and all the ads that it's crazy. Ads have gotten out of hand. You have to run ad blockers these days on everything. All right, so the cheapest fuel that I can get, well, let's go to the TA in Ontario. That's usually the cheapest place you can get fuel, is the TA Petro across the street from each other in Ontario. So the pump price, oh, my discount is not very, very big. Let's talk about that. Let's explain what that means. Let me show you. It's $7.99 a gallon, but that does not include the 6 cent per gallon discount that you get for paying with cash or a fuel card. So the pump price is actually $8.05 per gallon if you're paying with a credit card. The Landstar discount is only 60 cents per gallon. It's usually a lot higher than that. And the state fuel tax is 97 cents per gallon. California has some of the highest fuel tax in the country. To put it into some kind of context, Oklahoma, Texas are both around 18 cents a gallon. So California fuel tax is almost 5 times higher than most states. So let's talk about this Landstar discount. So Landstar fuel discount is a variable rate discount. It's, I think, now they don't give us the details about the contracts that they sign with these fuel companies, but I think it's most variable discounts are cost plus discounts. That means that we negotiate, or I don't. Landstar, the LCAP program in Landstar, those people negotiate with places like TA Petro, and they negotiate, okay, cost plus this amount. Whatever your cost is, we'll pay the fuel, we'll pay your cost plus like 25 cents a gallon. So if you're paying, let's say TA Petro is paying $1.50 a gallon for the fuel, and after all of their costs that they make up, that they decide their costs are or whatever, let's say their total cost for that fuel is $1.50 a gallon. And we're on a 25 cent per gallon cost plus. So we're paying $1.75 a gallon. What if the pump price is $3 a gallon? Well, then we're getting a $1.25 a gallon discount. So what happens is whenever fuel prices are really volatile, like they are right now, if you're on a cost plus discount program like we are at Landstar, which I think we are, I'm not 100%, I'm guessing that we are. I've had people reply and say, yes, we are on a cost plus at Landstar, but I don't know the people commenting, and I can't fact check that. Pretty sure we're on a cost plus. What happens when you're on a cost plus is you're paying wholesale fuel prices. If TA Petro's cost goes up today, then my discount goes, down today. Like the difference between the pump price and what TA Petro is paying, there's a lag time on that. So TA Petro's price could go up today, but they don't get around to raising the pump price until tomorrow or the next day. So whenever you see, like, let's say that my discount at the TA in Portland is $1.25 a gallon, which is not abnormal. I recently had $1.75 a gallon discount at the TA in Portland. So let's talk about that scenario. Let's say my fuel price, my discount was $1.75 a gallon at the TA Petro in just south of Portland. And then all of a sudden my discount drops down from $1.75 a gallon to like 85 cents a gallon. And the pump price does not change. It's still the same pump price. My discount just went down dramatically. That means that the cost to TA Petro went up on the fuel, but they haven't updated the pump price to reflect that. So you can expect that the pump price is going to go up in the next day or two. So whenever prices go up, we pay those price increases immediately. Whenever you're on some kind of cost plus program, you're paying wholesale fuel prices. When prices go up, you pay those increases immediately. And also, when prices go down, you get those discounts immediately. So there's some positive and negative to paying wholesale fuel prices, being on a cost plus instead of a flat rate discount. And it's usually a much bigger discount than flat rate. So anyway, back on fuel prices. So it's around $8 a gallon in California. What are the fuel prices? Let's go up to that TA just south of Portland. Let's see what the price is there. Where are you at? I think it's around $7 a gallon, but let's double check. No, that's Eugene. That's not Portland. There's Portland. All right. $6.32 a gallon plus 6 cents, so $6.39 a gallon. My discount is 92 cents a gallon. This is the TA in Aurora, Oregon, just south of Portland. You know what? I should flip this over to just me whenever I'm showing you this. Oh, now it's not going to focus on it. Oh, it was kind of focused on it there for a minute. Let me put my head behind it. Yay, nay. Close enough. You should be able to read it. So, 92 cent a gallon fuel tax. Oregon doesn't charge fuel tax at the pump. They have their own fuel tax program that you have to sign up for. That's the reason Oregon fuel prices look so cheap, is because you're not prepaying fuel tax. You still pay it. You just pay it, through their program instead of at the pump. All right. let's go ahead and flip over and do a load search, and we'll look at some loads while I continue talking about fuel prices and talking about, let's look at the load count real quick. 92,304 loads. That's a lot. To put that into some kind of context, whenever I first started with Landstar, if we were hitting 85,000 loads in a day, we were doing really good. That was a high load count. And then as we were going deeper into the all-time high freight market, the load count started hitting like 90,000, 95,000, 100,000. The highest load count I think I ever saw during the all-time high freight market was around 120,000 loads. And then Russia invaded Ukraine. Well, the freight market started going down, and then Russia invaded Ukraine. This all kind of happened really close together. They, one did not have anything to do really too much with the other. And I've talked about why we had the all-time high freight market and why it went away. A lot of people are confused about that. I'll give you a hint as to why we had the all-time high freight market. Government stimulus, or the government giving away money, unemployment benefits, stimulus checks, small business loans that did not need to be repaid. And there was a tremendous amount of fraud in all of those programs. There were large businesses that were exploiting those small business loans for hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah, the government was just throwing money into the economy, trying to get it, from crashing. And they caused a freight boom. And it's, if you're wondering why it lasted almost exactly 2 years, that's how long the unemployment benefits lasted, was like 2 years. They were giving everybody like an extra $600 a month on unemployment, and they extended unemployment benefits to like 2 years. People were making more money on unemployment than they were making working. Like some people were making like 2, 3, 4, 5 times more on unemployment. They were getting like $800 a week on unemployment, and they were making like $150, $200 a week working. So, yeah, that's the reason we had the freight boom. And then it magically just disappeared. And a lot of people were really confused as to why we had the freight boom. Why did it end? And I've heard all kinds of, theories as to why the freight boom happened. And like, it's not a big mystery if you understand how things work. If you remember back during that freight boom, what were some common things that you could not buy? Things that were sold out everywhere. Used cars. Were new cars sold out? No. Used cars were sold out. Why? Because those people on unemployment could not get approved to buy a new car. They were doing like buy here, pay here and stuff like that, getting used cars. So you couldn't find a used car. Video game consoles, TVs, electronics like that, sold out everywhere. If you give somebody that's poor, that doesn't have any money, extra money to where they can go out and buy stuff that they want, what are they going to buy? They're going to buy a PlayStation. They're going to buy a TV. They're going to go out and buy a used car. All of those things disappeared from the market. Anyway, that's another discussion. So the freight market started taking a downturn, and then Russia invaded Ukraine. They put sanctions on a lot of Russian and Ukrainian countries, and some of Landstar's biggest agents were Russians and Ukrainians. And because of the sanctions, Landstar put them out of business. Landstar terminated all their contracts. And Landstar's load board went from 100,000 loads a day down to 50,000 loads per day. There was a dramatic decrease in the load count on Landstar's load board whenever Russia invaded Ukraine because of the sanctions. So now we've been slowly climbing back up over time, and now we're hitting 92,000 loads. We're getting up there where we're pretty high. Now let's look at how many actual contract loads are there, because that's all that really matters. 10,559. That's pretty good. And that's normal. Usually it's around 10% of the loads on Landstar's load board are contract freight. The rest of them are just reposted spot market crap. They're fictitious loads. What do I mean by that? Well, if there are Landstar agents that have almost no contracts at all. They just make a living completely off of reposting crap from the spot market. So they will go out onto Dat load board and find a load, and they will post it onto Landstar's load board. Do they call the broker and negotiate with them? No. They just see whatever the load listing is. They make a guess as to what they think they could maybe get the price for on that load, and then they post that information on Landstar's load board. And you might have a dozen agents do that for one single load posted on the spot market. And that load might not even exist. It might already be covered. And whenever you call and try to book that load, they'll say, okay, great. Let me put you on hold for a minute while I check and make sure it's still available. And then they call the broker and they check, see if the load's available. And they ask them, they try to negotiate the price. And they come back to you and they tell you, oh, that load's actually covered. Or, oh, that load's available, but it's like half the price that I listed it at on the load board. Do you still want it? That's like, I don't recommend that you mess with spot market loads on Landstar's load board unless you're desperate. So I typically only look at contract freight when I'm doing load board videos, because the spot market loads on Landstar's load board are complete Fantasyland BS. Like, the rates they post them at are not right. A lot of the load information is just made up, and the loads are usually not available. They're already covered. So, all right. So we're looking at contract freight. Now let's do some basic search criteria. So I'm a dry van driver. Let's just look at dry van loads. You know what? Let's do a really quick search. I'm going to put a max weight of 45,000. I don't want to see oversize, overweight. What are some other things that I can do to get rid of overdimensional freight? I could restrict by type. Yeah, you know what? I just don't want to deal with I don't want to get people's hopes up with some overdimensional stuff, because it might be under the max. Usually overdimensional stuff is really heavy, but there might be some, really big overdimensional stuff that's under 45,000 pounds. So let's do just standard container, and then we'll do all van loads, and then under specialized, we'll do needing power only. Not a single, no, wait a second. 8510, 84.99. So there are 61, is that right? 61 power only loads. You know what? Let's look at just the power only loads real quick. Needing power only. 77 loads? Was I doing dualies? 2 loads. They're dually power only? What in the world? All right, let's do needing power only. Needing power only loads. Why would we want to look at that? Like, what's interesting about needing power only loads? Needing power only, that means they don't need a trailer, which typically means the customer has their own trailer. Why would the customer have their own trailer? A lot of times, those are dedicated runs. They're line haul runs, where you're hauling loads for like Saia, FedEx, or whoever. So needing power only, if you're looking for dedicated stuff, needing power only is a really cool thing to check. So let's see what we got here. A lot of deep Northeast loads. So Newark, New Jersey to Elizabeth, New Jersey. One single stop. Nothing interesting about that load. Let's look at it, though. Let's look at the comments. There's a whole bunch of these loads. There's one on the 3rd, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th. So it looks like they're posting one a week. There's one load per week, but the rate per mile that they're paying is absolute garbage. It looks like it might be a dedicated run, but it's terrible. And they don't have any notes on here. It's paying $280 a mile. Let's do some math. What's 70% of 280? $1.96 per mile. That's not very good. Especially up in the deep Northeast where you're paying crazy amounts of money for tolls and parking. This load is really bad. It's a terrible load. All right, let's go back to search results. Rochester to Rochester. This is the kind of stuff you're looking for dedicated runs, where its origin and destination are the same. Now it has a whole bunch of stops on it, and that this is most likely not a dedicated run. Let's take a peek at them. They have multiples listed, but let's see what they are. It's this same agent, this GAO agency, and this is, where's it going? It's going New Jersey to Rochester to New Jersey. It's a bunch of the same crap, it looks like. Oh my goodness. I was hoping it would just show me the agency names instead of taking me to another page, but no. Baltimore to Baltimore. Is this going to be the exact same agency? Yeah, it's the same agency. I'm not even going to look at this crap. They're just posting tons of this crap. I don't know what these loads are, but their pay is bad. They're just bad loads. And if the load board gets flooded with one particular agent posting lots of trash loads, I'll block that agency so I don't have to sift through their crap. There are agents that I've blocked because they just spam the load board with trash loads. Okay, we have auto part loads. Auto part loads are generally good loads. This one is not paying very well, $2.60 a mile. Again, that's the full rate. You only get about 70% of that. So that's going to be like $2 a mile, or like $1.85 a mile, something like that. Cincinnati to Cincinnati. Let's check and see if it's a dedicated run. April 15th to the 17th, 16th to the 18th, 7th through the 9th, 8th to the 10th. They have tons and tons of these loads. It's all the exact same agency, the YGM agency. They're copy and paste loads. Let's see what the comments say. Let's see if it's a dedicated run. Fuel premium applied. Oh my goodness, we've already paid an amazing fuel surcharge on this, so don't try to negotiate fuel surcharge with us because we already have a premium applied. That's what that says. $4,500 plus to the truck weekly. Round trip, Kansas City, Missouri. So it's going from Cincinnati to Kansas City and back once a week. And it's paying $4,500 gross to the truck, according to this. Now, that doesn't match up with any of the information that they posted on the load board. So this is Cincinnati to Kansas City round trip. How many loads per week? So they're doing $31.71 revenue. And this new load board does not tell me what the fuel surcharge is. This is one of the things I've given feedback on this before. I've emailed them and told them, you know, I'm a business owner. I need to know what I'm getting paid to make a business decision. Why aren't you telling me? This tells me what this tells me is that the Landstar agent filled out the accessorial pay and they filled out what the fuel surcharge is. But the moron that designed this load board thought that it wasn't important to tell me what the fuel surcharge is. So they're just telling me, hey, this thing, the Landstar agent filled out fuel surcharge, but we're not going to tell you what they put in there. It's been like this for years. I gave feedback on this like 4 or 5 years ago. Nothing has changed. This is just janky. This load board is janky. And I don't know. It's just terrible. Well, this load board, what I think it is, I think it's a Siebel application by Oracle. This screams Oracle. Oracle is well known in the industry, in the technology industry, for their applications. They sell a lot of applications to a lot of big companies, and they're terrible. They're just cookie cutter crap that they put almost no effort into, and it just runs like crap, and they're very feature lacking. But they have a really good sales and marketing team, so really big companies sign up for their crap because really big companies don't really understand technology most of the time. So anyway, yeah, this is a dedicated run. Let me do the math on this real quick. So 3171 times 0.7, that's 2219.70 times 2. Oh, not 7 times 2. That's $4,439.40. So it looks like you're doing 2 of these round trips per week, which would be about 2,500 miles, 2,500 miles. The listed miles is 1,218 on this. That's probably not your actual miles. Your actual miles are likely going to be higher than that. So 2,500 miles a week, doing 2 round trips between Cincinnati and Kansas City. So yeah, the math is working out on this to where you're going to make about $4,500 a week gross to the truck, doing about 2,500 miles a week. That comes out to $1.77, round up to $1.78 a mile. So not paying that great. $1.78 a mile. Now let's go back and talk about the fuel prices. I said that I was going to talk about that. We need to talk about that. Now, this dedicated run at $1.78 a mile isn't terrible if we're looking at 2 months ago. But looking at the situation right now, this load is really, really bad. I want to use different words. Like I wanted to say it's dog, but I'm trying to keep the language down to a minimum. I'm trying to control the language. This load is terrible. Why? Okay, let's do some really quick math on fuel prices. Let's go back here and look at this, and I'll have this in the background while we're talking about fuel prices. So let's do some math on fuel prices. How much does it cost you to drive the truck down the road? I know there are people out there that say that they get 30 miles a gallon on their truck, and there are people out there that say that they get 3 miles a gallon on their truck. What is normal mile per gallon on a truck? About 7 miles per gallon is very normal. There are people who get less than that. There's people who get more than that. And it's very situational. If you're doing a lot of flatland driving, if you're driving at low speeds, if you're driving light loads, you can get good fuel mileage. If you're doing a lot of mountain driving with heavy loads, how many miles per gallon are you getting climbing up a 6% grade at 80,000 pounds? You're getting like 3 miles per gallon when you're climbing up that mountain. So you're lucky if you're getting an average of 5 miles per gallon if you're doing a lot of mountain driving with heavy weight. So 7 miles per gallon is a very normal average mile per gallon. So how much is that for every $1 per gallon that you're paying? So if you're paying $1 a gallon per fuel and you're getting 7 miles per gallon, that is 1 divided by 7, 14 cents per mile that it's costing you to drive that truck. It's costing you 14 cents per mile for every $1 a gallon you're paying for fuel. 14 cents per mile. So every time the fuel prices go up by $1 a gallon, you're paying an extra 14 cents a mile to move the truck down the road. So a couple months ago, $1.78 a gallon, or $1.78 a mile was not very good. Most owner operator, their cost to move the truck down the road, including all expenses, is about $1.75 a mile. So if you're only making $1.78 a mile, you're profitable by about 3 cents a mile. That's not good because you're going to have unexpected expenses. So you have to make more than what your operating cost is because you have to set money aside for unexpected expenses on top of that. You really need to make a minimum of like 10 cents a mile above and beyond your operating cost just to stay flush. You're not actually going to be making much of any profit in the business. You're just going to stay flush. So $1.85 a mile to stay flush. Well, fuel prices have gone up dramatically. Have they gone up by $1 a gallon? How much have fuel prices gone up in the last couple of months? Okay. Let's look at fuel prices at a very specific gas station. And let's compare 2 months ago to what it is now. Because I know what the price was 2 months ago. In Oklahoma City, I paid $2.16 a gallon a couple of months ago. $2.16 a gallon. Now that was my price after discount. And I want to say the pump price was around $2.75 a gallon. So in Oklahoma City a couple of months ago, the pump price was about $2.75. You know what? I don't even have to guess. Let me pull up my email. Even though I'm pretty sure I canceled. I think I canceled my XPO Logistics fuel card because they started charging a $5 monthly fee for the card. It used to not have any monthly fee on it. But when they tacked on that monthly fee, I said, turn this crap off. I'm not paying $60 a year for you guys to take a cut on my fuel discount. So, because that's how the fuel discount cards, that's how they make money, is they take a slice off the pie. So they negotiate like a 25 cent per gallon discount, and they give you a 20 cent per gallon discount, and they keep the other 5% or 5 cents of your discount. That's approximately how these fuel cards make money, is they're not giving you the full discount. They're taking a cut. So anyway, I still get emails from these jackasses. So let me pause this while I look and see what the fuel price was a couple months ago. I was way off. Okay, so it was $3.20 a gallon. So I must have been getting over $1 a gallon discount. This was back, I think I checked January 17th was the date that I checked. So January 17th, the TA off Morgan Road in Oklahoma City was $3.20 a gallon plus 6 cents per gallon for fuel tax, or not fuel tax, but the cash discount. So $3.26 a gallon. Let's see what it is today. Let's look at the exact same place. The TA on Morgan Road is now $5.26 per gallon right now. Let me switch this over. Second here. Only got so many hands. Focus. There we go. That is the price right now. $5.26 a gallon. So that makes for easy math. It's exactly $2 a gallon more expensive. Fuel prices have gone up by $2 a gallon exactly here in Oklahoma City. They've gone up by a lot more over on the West Coast. Let's go back over to this. The West Coast fuel prices have gone up, like, what was it, $6.50 a gallon in Portland? It's gone up by like $2.50 a gallon or $3 a gallon. California, I think, has gone up even more than that. They're up at like $8 a gallon now in California. So $2 a gallon. So if you're paying a little over 14 cents a gallon for every $1 a gallon, and it's gone up by 2 cents a gallon, what does that mean? That means that for you to be making the same amount of money today that you were making 2 months ago before the fuel prices started going up for the war. I know the war is only a month old, but people were expecting the United States to attack Iran. Fuel prices started going up almost a month before the attack happened. So you can't just look at prices right before the attack or right after the attack, because fuel prices had gone up dramatically even before the attack happened, in anticipation of the attack. So to go back before fuel prices started rising, you need to be making about 29 cents per mile more today than you were 2 months ago to be able to make the same amount of money today that you were making 2 months ago. And that's just for like the central part of the country. That's not the deep Northeast where fuel prices are insane, or that's not for the West Coast where fuel prices are insane. You need to make more per mile over in those areas where fuel prices have gone up even more to be, making the same amount of money. So 28 cents, 29 cents a mile, we'll say 29 cents a mile. That doesn't sound like a lot, but to get a customer to pay an extra 29 cents a mile is huge. Just let me put it into some kind of context. The normal run that I do is from when I leave the house, I grab a run from Dallas to the Portland, Seattle area. Those runs are generally around 2,100 miles. How much extra is that on a load? So 2,100 times 29 cents, 0.29. That's an extra $609 on the load. And that is full. Like I need that full amount. So the load has to pay an extra $609 in fuel surcharge. So that means the total price of the load is going to increase. So I have to take that 609 and I have to divide it by 0.7. And that comes up with $870 because I only get about 70% of whatever the full rate of the load is posted at. So what the load is posted at on the full rate, it needs to pay about $870 more than it's already paying. That's a lot of money to get like a customer to pay extra. An extra $870 for a load. That could be like a 10%, maybe even a 15% increase on the load price. That's substantial to get a customer to do that. So what customers tend to do is they just play a shell game where they increase the fuel surcharge a little bit and they just move money from the line haul over the fuel surcharge. They're just shifting the money around. You're not actually making any more money on the load. They're just moving the numbers around. They're playing games. So there are people out there that are like, oh, with these high fuel prices, we're going to make more money because of fuel surcharge. That is not how the world works. You have like some utopian, gullible ideology going on right there. That's not how businesses work. Businesses are trying to screw everybody else out of money as much as they possibly can. They're trying to pay as little and get as much as they can. That's every business. All right, let's keep going through these loads. So the loads right now need to pay about 30 cents a mile more than what they were paying before. So if $2.50 a mile was, mediocre 2 months ago, now it's $2.80 a mile. $2.80 a mile is mediocre now. So we got all these is this yeah. Oh, I'm drilled into the Cincinnati loads. So we have those Cincinnati dedicated runs that are paying $4,500 gross to the truck. Let's do the math on that really quick. So if you're driving 2,500 miles at 7 miles per gallon, you're using 357 gallons of fuel. And what's your average fuel price going to be? Let's use Landstar's discount. What is Landstar's discount price over in the Cincinnati area? Let's just get a rough idea. So Cincinnati. All right, I'm seeing some like $4.50 to $5 a gallon after discounts. $4.54 a gallon is the cheapest. That's not quite Cincinnati though. It's actually a lot more expensive in Cincinnati. I was looking at Indianapolis. You're not going to go as far north as Indianapolis. So 464 is the cheapest in Cincinnati. And around 5 in Louisville. Where the hell is Kansas City? That should be really cheap. Yeah, it's a little over $4 a gallon, 4.09. So the price is anywhere from $5 a gallon to $4.09 a gallon after discount. So let's say that you're just topping off, well, 2,500 miles. I don't think you're going to be able to just top off in Kansas City. Let's say $4.50 a mile is your average cost for fuel. So times 450, 357 gallons times 400. Oh wait, I did that wrong. Let me redo this. 2,500 divided by 7 times 4.5, not 450. So that is $1,607 approximately. That's your fuel cost, is about roughly $1,607. So that would be $2,892.85. That would be how much you would make after fuel cost is $2,800. We'll say $2,900. After your fuel cost, $2,900. What's the average weekly cost for a truck? Most people are paying like $700 a week for their truck payment, around $300 a week for insurance. And then they have bookkeeping services, tax services, subscription services, equipment rentals, all that stuff. $1,200 a week is really normal. So $2,892 minus $1,200. Oh, $2,900 minus $1,200. So that leaves you with $1,700 per week. That's not bad. That's, mediocre company driver money. That's not brand new, straight out of training, $1,000 a week company driver money. It's decent company driver money. It's, you have 6 months to a year of experience company driver money. It's not, you've got a decent line haul LTL job. You're making $2,500 a week. So it's not bad. You can make a living off that run. It's not good, but it's not bad. All right, let's keep rolling through here. Albuquerque, New Mexico to Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's not too far from me. And there are 16 of these loads posted. Let's see what this crap is. Oh, 21st, 23rd. It looks like there's only, these are sporadic loads. It looks like there's only like one load per week. Let's take a peek at them and see if there's any comments. No comments. And it's that GAO agency. It's that same agency that had all those trash New Jersey, New York loads. So let's not even look at this garbage. I don't like that GAO agency. Blaine, Minnesota to Blaine, Minnesota. This is the CGI agency. They have the Saya account. Let's see what this says. This is most likely a line haul dedicated. Rate is based off 2,500 miles. This is power only, pulling customer 53-foot trailers. These runs will stay in and around Minnesota. You can earn more depending on the amount of miles. It's $2.15 a mile line haul, and currently 44 cents a mile fuel surcharge. That is really low fuel surcharge. The fuel surcharge should be much, much higher. That is really, really garbage fuel surcharge. So let's do the math on this. So it's $2.15 line haul, and you get paid out at 70%. Whenever you're using a customer trailer, whenever you're not using a Landstar trailer, you get 70% instead of 65%. So 2.15 times 0.7. So that's $1.50 a mile is what they're paying for the load. They're paying $1.50 a mile. And then they're forced to pay fuel surcharge on top of that because they're cheap bastards. So let's add in 44. So this load is paying $1.94.5 a mile. We'll round it up. We'll give them that extra half a penny and say this load is paying $1.95 a mile. That is hot garbage. That is terrible. These SIA loads, they used to pay decent, but every time they renegotiate the contract, they drop it significantly, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's gotten to the point where these loads used to be some of the premium loads on the board, and now these SIA loads are hot garbage. You're not going to stay in business running your truck at $1.95 a mile gross to the truck. You're not going to stay in business for a long time. You're not going to be very profitable. You're going to be making company driver money. And company drivers do not have big unexpected expenses that can be like $15,000 or $20,000. So if you're making company driver money, just imagine if a company driver had, they just showed up for work one day and the boss said, hey, you know what? Your truck broke down and it's going to cost $15,000 to fix it. Could you imagine a company driver having to deal with that with their $1,500 a week that they're making before taxes? They couldn't afford that. How do you expect to afford that making company driver money as an owner operator? All right. What do we got here? New York to Elizabeth, New Jersey. Not going to look at that. Brantford, Ontario. So some Canadian load going to Baytown, Texas, which is Houston. And the load board just like did that thing where it shifted around and it's doing this crap where every time I scroll down, it's like jerking around all over the place. This is interesting. We have some loads that don't have any rates posted on them. So we have one that is the USA agency and a couple of them that are the VAM agency. The VAM agency has SIA and FedEx contracts. What in the hell is this? I've never heard of this USA agency. Let's take a look at this load. What is this? It's a load that picks up in Northampton, Pennsylvania and goes to, I don't know how to pronounce that, Charlevoix, Michigan. It's a one-day load for 800 miles, so that is going to require a team. It's not flagged as a team load. It's power only, hauling machinery, 30,000 pounds. Its description is a loaded 20-foot trailer on a chassis. So it's a container. It's a 20-foot container on a chassis. And they're wanting to pay $1 a mile to have you haul it 800 miles. This load does not make any damn sense at all the way it's posted on here. All right, let's look at these VAM loads that are posted with no money on them. See if there's any comments that give us an idea. Oh, this actually does have, it has a revenue amount, but it's listed as 0 miles. So what happens when you multiply by 0? That's the reason it was showing that it didn't pay anything. So the comments say that this is a power-only round trip pulling customer 53-foot vans. Rate is $2.65 a mile plus 71 cent per mile fuel surcharge for miles driven. We make a weekly freight bill and revenue advertised is based on average of 500 miles per day. This is not listed as a team load, and they said 500 miles per day, so that's solo mileage. So let's do the math on this. This is 2.65 times 0.7. That's $1.85 a mile. That's decent. Plus 0.71, 71 cents per mile fuel surcharge. They're paying a decent fuel surcharge rate. So you're getting 256 and a half to the truck. We'll round it up. We'll give them that half a penny. So that's 257 a mile gross to the truck. This load is a little bit of a diamond in the rough. Because of the way they screwed up on listing this load, there's probably no one looking at this load. How long has this load been listed? 2 days. And they're probably not getting any calls on this load. Why? Because it has 0 rate per mile. Because they put in that it was 0 miles. And let me put it this way. In order for you to set up a load alert on the phone app, you have to put in a rate per mile. So any agency that lists a load that's below, I think you have to put in a rate per mile of a minimum of 50 cents per mile for a load alert. So any agent that lists a load that's less than like 50 cents per mile, you cannot get a load alert on that. You might be able to if you set up load alerts through the old load board, but through the phone app, I don't think it'll let you. So if you are in the Vandalia, Ohio area, I have no idea where Vandalia, what that reminds me of is that old movie with Chevy Chase and Demi Moore. Was it Nothing But Trouble? It had, oh my God, who is that comedian that was on Saturday Night Live? I can't remember his name. Dan Aykroyd. Had Dan Aykroyd in it as well. The Valkenheiser or whatever was the name of the town. Vandalia, Ohio reminds me of Vulcanvania, I think was the name of the town. Vulcanvania or something like that. When I saw Vandalia, Ohio, it reminded me of the Vulcanvania town in Nothing But Trouble. So anyway, this is a really nice dedicated run. This looks pretty sweet. This is something that you should probably call in on. If you live anywhere near the let's look at a map and just see where Vandalia, Ohio's at. Come on. Pull up. All right. Let me got to do button presses here to zoom out. Dayton. So it's Dayton, Ohio is where it's at. Which is basically right in the middle of Columbus, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. So Dayton, Ohio. Most likely they're going to be running you to Chicago a lot. I would suspect that there's a lot of runs from Dayton to Chicago. That would likely be where you'd be doing a lot of runs. But they don't give specifics on where they're sending you. And it might be a contract where it's just forced dispatch for a week, and you just have to go wherever in the hell they tell you. I don't like doing those kind of contracts. That's one of the reasons I'm an owner-operator, so I get to choose where I'm going. I'm not going to have somebody tell me I have to go into, Jamaica, New York. Go screw yourself. I'm not doing that. So, yeah, that is a really sweet little load right there. Let's look. VAM has another one listed right here, Chicago Ridge, Illinois to Chicago Ridge, Illinois. If I had to bet, I would say that both of these are the exact same load. But you can either start in Chicago or you can start in Dayton. But you're going back and forth between Chicago and Dayton. And I'll tell you right now that I've actually seen these dedicated runs posted on the load board a lot for the last couple of months. For some reason, they're not covering these loads. And it could be the way that they're listing the loads with 0 rate per mile because they're putting them as 0 miles. I've seen these loads on the load board a lot for the last couple of months. So if you want to do a dedicated run between Chicago and Dayton, then reach out to the VAM agency and they're running it at 250 a mile gross to the truck. You can do really well as an owner operator. Even with fuel prices where they're at right now, you can be very profitable at 250 a mile as long as you have normal expenses or lower than normal expenses. All right, what else we got going on here? Watertown to Mahoopany, Pennsylvania. Um, all the rest of these loads just look like one-off trailer moves where they're just being really cheap. Like even this load listed at $6.96 a mile, $6.96 a mile. That sounds awesome, right? But it's only 200 miles. This isn't worth your time. You know, the rest of these loads on here are hot garbage. Don't touch that crap. But those VAM loads between Dayton and Chicago, those are really nice. I would highly recommend if you live in that area and you're interested in running a dedicated between Dayton and Chicago, hop on that. I'm surprised that's not covered. Like that's a pretty sweet dedicated run right there. Most of the dedicated runs I find are paying rates to the truck that are basically not profitable. They're paying like $1.75 gross to the truck, $1.85 gross to the truck. Like you're going to go out of business hauling at those prices. To find a dedicated run that's actually not only paying profitable, it's actually paying a pretty good rate. If you take 250 a mile, 2.5, and then divide that by 0.7, 70%, that's the equivalent of a load that you see on the load board that's paying $3.57 a mile. And you're doing about 2,500 miles a week, is what they say. 500 miles a day, 2,500 miles a week is what you should expect. So imagine seeing a load on the load board that's 2,500 miles, paying $3.57 a mile. What is that? That's 2,500. That's $8,928. Imagine that you saw a load on the load board that's $9,000 on the full rate, and it's going 2,500 miles, paying $9,000. It's $3.57 per mile. You saw that load on the load board. Would you not be interested in that load? That's a really good load. If I saw that load on the load board, I would book it. So yeah, those loads going between Chicago and Dayton, that dedicated run, that's a pretty sweet dedicated run. There has to be some kind of issue with that run for it to be sitting on the load board right now, especially with how long it's been sitting on the load board. Like I said, I've been seeing those dedicated runs sitting on the load board a lot for the last couple of months. I might deadhead all the way up to Dayton and do that dedicated run for like 2 months. That is how good that load is. Just run up there and do that dedicated run for a couple months. That would be, what would that be per week? That would be about $6,250 per week. If you're getting the 255 a mile or whatever it was, 257 a mile almost, and you're getting 2,500 miles a week, that would be about $6,250 a week gross to the truck. If I went out there and I did that dedicated run for 2 months, so let's say 8 weeks times 8, I would make $50,000 approximately. $50,000 over the course of 2 months gross to the truck. That would be pretty sweet. That would be like really, really awesome. Just go out there, do that dedicated run for a couple of months, and then deadhead to the house. Or see if I can find a load to the house. Be a pretty sweet gig. You do not have to live in that area to do a dedicated run in that area, as long as you run it like an over-the-road, a regular over-the-road thing. You're going to be away from home for 2 or 3 months. Just go out there and run that dedicated for 2 or 3 months, and then find a load back to the house. All right. Let's get rid of the power only. Let's look at van loads. Van, container. And we've already looked at, normally I'll add power only in there, but we've already looked at all of the power only loads, so we're not going to include those. Now let's do minimum revenue and minimum rate per mile. Let's do a minimum revenue of $2,000 and a minimum rate per mile of, well, used to we would do $2.50 a mile, but let's increase it by 30 cents a mile because of the increased fuel prices. So let's do $2.80 a mile. 3,283 total loads. Let's search these. You know what? Just a second here. Let's go back to the search and let's delete this criteria and let's do a search. And let's just look at the most expensive loads on the board. Let's see if there's any like $100,000 tours or anything like that. Dallas, Texas to Dallas, Texas, paying $18,000, 6,300 miles. Picks up today. It's been sitting on the load board for 4 days. If you don't watch my videos very often, let me explain something to you. Any load that sits on the load board for more than about an hour is not a good load, unless it picks up really far into the future. If you post a load that's not picking up for 3 weeks and it's a really good load, it could sit on the load board for a couple of days before somebody covers it. But for the day that it picks up today, and it's been sitting on the load board for 4 days, that means that this load is hot garbage. So let's look at this load that nobody wants. Used to, back when we had like 15,000 trucks at Landstar, a load like this would not sit on the load board because there was a lot of people that did not understand math, and they would book really crappy loads just because they paid a lot of money. Or just because the rate per mile was, they would see one number that looked good and they would not understand the full context of the load. And you would see these really trash loads disappear off the load board in a couple minutes. You're like, really? Somebody booked that like instantly? Why? All right, let's look at the details. Power only round trip pulling R&L trailer. I think that's probably the line haul company. There's a line haul company called R&L. It could mean something else. I really don't like it when agents put like acronyms and, you know, their own little language in the comment section. You should not use acronyms and terminology that's not standard. That's not, you shouldn't use that crap whenever you're posting comments to a large audience, because they don't know what in that. A lot of these agents, they have like their own little language that they use inside their office with their, let's say that's an agency of like 20 people. They'll have their own little language and they'll post in the comments in their own little language. And you're like, what the? I don't know what any of this crap means. So I'm guessing that it's the R&L LTL company. That would be my guess. But it could mean something completely different. It could be a rattler and loose trailer or something. Who knows what R&L stands for? Let's see what it's a power only round trip. So it's going from Dallas to Sauget, Illinois, to Dallas, to Sauget, Illinois, to Dallas, to Sauget. It's just back and forth between Dallas and Sauget, Illinois for a week. This is a team. Okay, so it's flagged as a team load. So this is a 1 week dedicated run. I don't know if they have this every week or if it's just this one single week that they have this load. This is a 1 week team dedicated run going back and forth between Dallas and St. Louis. And it's paying $18,000 for the week. Let's do 70% of that. I'm going to just do 18,000. I'm not going to put in the actual number. Times 0.7, $12,600 for a week. $12,600 for a week. But that's for a team. Let's cut that in half. Divided by 2. That's $6,300. Each person is getting about $6,300. But then you have all of the expenses coming out. You have like twice the fuel cost. You usually have twice the expenses on a team. So not quite twice the expenses. No, people will say, well, you have the same truck payment. Your truck payment's $700 a week and you're getting twice the use out of the truck. You're also wearing out the truck twice as fast. So yeah, your expenses are twice as much on a team. You're using twice as much fuel. You're burning through the truck twice as fast. So you might as well double your truck payment. So yeah, it's that's almost the exact same amount that the Dayton to Chicago load was paying. What was that paying? $6,250 per week gross to the truck. And this thing's paying $6,300 gross to the truck per week. So it's basically exactly the same amount of money as the solo one we were looking at. All right, Bakersfield to Alaska. We're not even going to look at Alaska. Like, that's crazy. Don't go to Alaska. Don't do that. Even if you see a load's paying like $10 a mile going to Alaska, don't do that. Just don't. Culpeper, Virginia to Mesa, Arizona. 9 stops on it. You know what? This is probably another team load. I'm going to have to remove teams. This is not a team load. 4,300 miles. No comments. So it's going from Culpeper, Virginia to Las Vegas, Spring Valley, California, Carlsbad, California, North Highlands, California, Chico, California, Susanville, California, Sparks, Nevada. So this is one single load that has a whole bunch of stops across Nevada and California. And there's a final in Phoenix. I didn't see that in the list. Mesa, Arizona. Yeah, there's one final delivery in Mesa, Arizona. That is a terrible way to route that load. That is just a horrible way to route that load. Like, who's the idiot that routed it that way? What I would prefer is to go from Culpeper to Phoenix, Phoenix to Vegas, Vegas to LA, and then up to Northern California and end in Reno, Nevada. Or another way that you could potentially do it is start in Phoenix, then go to Vegas, then go to Reno, then go to Northern California, and then come back down to LA. It depends on where you want to be looking for your next load. If you're wanting to do just shortest mileage, I'm not sure exactly what that would be. Shortest mileage would probably be Phoenix, LA, Vegas, Reno, Northern California. That would probably be shortest mileage. But the way they have it set up doesn't make any damn sense. It's not the shortest mileage. It's not the best route. It's not the best place to end to be looking for your next load. It's like, this isn't the best of any of the options. So that is not a very good load. It's paying $3 a mile. So that's paying $2.10 a mile gross to the truck approximately. Which, with the 30 cent per mile increased fuel prices, is not very good. This is not a good load. All right, where are we at? We were looking at this Mesa, Arizona load. Okay. Mundelein, Illinois to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. This is the VAM agency, which usually posts pretty good loads. This thing is $365 a mile for 3,400 miles. The VAM agency does a lot of team loads. So this is probably a team. Let's check. Yes, this is a team load. So it's going from Mundelein, Illinois to Salt Lake City to Salt Lake City. And there's a 2-day gap while you're in Salt Lake City. You have to set for 2 days. And then you go to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. That's weird. Drop and hook on both ends, possible hazmat lane, can range from 2,000 to 42,000 pounds, but is almost always 32,000 or below. That is bull stuff. I've hauled a lot of these line haul runs for the VAM agency, and the average is not below 32,000 pounds. These line haul companies try to squeeze every pound they can into these trailers. They're not supposed to put 42,000 pounds or more of cargo into these trailers, but they usually get them upper 30s. Like 38,000 pounds is much more average than below 32, like they say in these comments. They've had that comment on there forever. I've hauled these loads a couple of times, and I've hauled these loads like 5 years ago when I first started with Landstar, and they had the exact same comment back then. They've been copying and pasting that comment for years, and it's not true. Wow, this one actually has the fuel surcharge amount on the load board. 2,956.68. It doesn't say what the rate per mile is on it, but $3,000 of that $12,500 is fuel surcharge. That is a lot more than 70%, I think. So let's do the math on this. You're hauling, no, this is not a customer trailer, so you're getting 65%. I really don't want to math this shit out. I don't feel like mathing it. You can math it out. So you just take the fuel surcharge, subtract that from the total amount, and that tells you what the line haul is. Then you do 65% of that, and then add the fuel surcharge back in at 100%. And you can figure out exactly what it's paying. It would be right around $9,000, 9,500. You know what? Let me just do it. 9,500 times 0.65. That's 6,175, and then add the 3,000 back in. It's somewhere in the ballpark of $9,000. That load pays about $9,000 gross to the truck. You're splitting it with another person, so that's $4,500. This load pays crap. You can go get that, some other runs that are paying like $6,500 or $6,000 per person. This one's paying $4,500 a week per person. And there are loads out there that are paying over $6,000. No bueno. This is no good. Jackson, Mississippi to Hawthorne, California. This is that IKK agency that posts lots of dedicated runs coming out of Jackson, Mississippi. They have advertisements in the comments section about, if you live in Jackson, Mississippi, we have these loads all the time. And they're listed at these really amazing rates. I think it's a rental equipment company. And they have all kinds of restrictions, like need a 2019 or newer truck, year-round work for dedicated drivers that live near Mississippi. Now, it used to say near Jackson, Mississippi. Now it just says near Mississippi. So they're expanding the range that they're willing to take drivers. Must be able to go to all 48 states. No teams, owner-operator. Now, I don't know what in the hell this means down here. Does it mean, because it says no teams, owner-operator? That's not how you form a sentence, so it leaves me just guessing as to what they're trying to say here. Does it say... Now, it would be absolutely insane for them to not allow owner-operators, because Landstar is an owner-operator company. Like, almost everyone driving, under the Landstar name that's leased to Landstar is an owner-operator. There are a lot of owner-operators that hire employees to drive for Landstar. So there are company drivers at Landstar. There are no drivers that work directly for Landstar. There are drivers that work for agents. And there are drivers that work for, trucking companies that are leased to Landstar that have employees. But there's not a lot of them. So, and it doesn't make any sense that you would only allow employees. So I think what this means is that They won't allow teams, and you have to be an owner operator. You cannot be an employee. You can't be like a subcontractor or an employee. You have to be the company owner to be able to do this run. I don't know why they would not allow teams. Why would they restrict it to no teams? I've always been curious about that. 2019 or newer trucks, I don't know why they have that requirement. Um, they've been advertising these loads for several years, and I don't think they've been updating that requirement. Like 2 or 3 years ago, I think it still said a 2019 or newer truck. So it's not like it has to be, a 3 year or newer truck. There's something about 2019. A 2019 truck is a pretty old truck these days. And 3 years ago, whenever I started noticing these loads, that was a pretty new truck. But now it's a fairly old truck. A 2019 truck these days, that's like 7 years old. So a model year 2019 actually sold, and it was manufactured in 2018 and sold in 2018 most likely. So a truck from 2018 has been on the road for like 8 years. That thing is due for a rebuild probably. It's up at around 800,000 to 1,000,000 miles or more if it's been driven normally. Trucks generally get 100 to 150,000 miles on them with a solo driver. 100 to 150,000 miles a year with a solo driver. Team trucks can get more than that. But just 100,000 a year over 8 years, that's 800,000 miles on that. Why? Like, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. But anyway, somebody replied to one of my videos about them, and they told me, I can't remember what exactly their comments said, but they were like, it is rental equipment, but it fits inside a van. It's rental equipment that fits inside a van or something like that. I can't remember. But I did some research trying to figure out what that run was at one point, and I'm pretty sure it's a rental company. I looked up the name of the agency, and the agent that is advertising that load also owns a rental equipment company in Jackson, Mississippi. I think I did some research and pulled all the strings together, and it looked like it was a rental equipment company. All right, Indianapolis, Indiana to Fort Smith, Arkansas. Looks decent. Ooh. Topton, Pennsylvania to Topton, Pennsylvania. This is the kind of stuff you're looking at, is where the origin and the destination are the same. If you're looking for a dedicated run, that's usually what you're looking for. So this might be a dedicated run. It is really cheap. Huge mileage, but it's only paying $2.38 a mile. And you get 70% of that. So 2.38 times 0.7 is $1.66 a mile. This is below operating cost. This is terrible. It's the RVW agency. That sounds familiar. Round trip to Nogales, Arizona. Live load, drop, and hook in Nogales. So this doesn't look like a dedicated run. It just looks like one really terrible, cheaply negotiated, like, what kind of moron negotiates rates like that are below operating cost? Like, every agent that negotiates rates that are below operating costs, like, you need to go work at McDonald's or something. This is not the line of work for you. You do not understand what you're doing. Fort Worth, Texas to Elk Grove, California, the VAM agency. Let's see, Grand Prairie to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Here's another one of that IKK in Jackson, Mississippi. Those rental equipment. I think that they rent out things like miniature bulldozers and miniature backhoes and stuff like that. Not like full-sized ones, but small ones. I think that's what they mainly rent out. So you're probably delivering and picking that stuff up. That would be my guess. Baltimore to Baltimore. I don't even want to look at that. That is a nightmare. Baltimore, Maryland is like the worst traffic area in the entire country. I've heard horror stories about truck drivers just lining up the shoulder on the interstate because there's nowhere to park in Baltimore. They'll just park, they'll just line up and down the shoulders of the interstate. Um, yeah, there's no way. You couldn't pay me enough money to do loads in and out of Baltimore. The Washington, D.C. area, no way. I'm not dealing with that area. Just some thoughts. Scrolling through here, I'm seeing a lot of the VAM agency and the CGI agency, and I wish that there was another agent that would get a line haul contract. There are other line haul companies out there aside from Saya and FedEx. Go out there and get some contracts with UPS or Old Dominion, or I can't even remember what line haul companies are still in business these days. Do not get a contract with XPO Logistics. I don't want to deal with that crap company. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of other line haul companies I wish these agents would go out there and get some business with. I heard that right before I started with Landstar, right before I leased on with Landstar, some agency had their contract terminated because Landstar found out that they were lying about the amount that they were getting paid, and they were taking a big cut out off the loads. And Landstar found out about it and completely terminated their contract. But supposedly that agency had some line haul contract, and there were a lot of people doing those runs, and they were really happy with those runs. Um, I remember people talking about it whenever I was down at the Fort Worth terminal through like my cabs classes and stuff like that. I remember people talking about that kind of stuff and about how they wish they still had those loads. So apparently there used to be more dedicated stuff on Landstar's load board, but we had greedy agents out there lying about how much the loads were paying so that they could take a bigger cut. They were basically stealing from the driver and from Landstar. So they were stealing from the trucking company. The broker was stealing from the trucking company and from the uh, carrier and broker authority. That's what Landstar, that's what they lease, is carrier authority and broker authority. So the Landstar agents, they use Landstar's broker authority, and the Landstar trucking companies that lease on use their carrier authority to operate under. Hmm. And keep in mind that I'm not filtering out team loads. So if you see some awesome looking load on here and you're like, I'm going to get rich hauling that, it might be a team load. Oh, the load board is messing up and it's like resetting and jerking up and down and stuff. If you have epilepsy, it might trigger you. All right, let's do a new search. Let's actually put in some minimum stuff here. What I was doing on the big search was just whenever I first started with Landstar, if you did a search like that, there would be a whole bunch of loads paying like 50, 80, $100,000 up at the top of the load board. And what were those loads? Those loads were tours or long-term contracts of like 2 or 3 months. And they were not very good loads. Back when we were at all-time high freight market, those loads were paying like 250 a mile, something like that. They weren't very good. You can make a lot more money just hauling random crap on the load board. So I never hauled one of them. But we don't see those loads on the board anymore. Those tours, used to like when I first started with Landstar, there were always tours sitting on the load board. Nobody booked them. Well, I'm sure there were people booking them, but they were always available. If you wanted to do a tour, you'd go do a tour. I don't know what tours they were. They didn't say in the comment section what exactly they were touring for. But it could be anything from um, uh, like some kind of holiday show, or it could be for like some singer or whatever. There were lots of different things. I think they were mainly a lot of the tours that I saw. It was holiday shows. It was just like some traveling holiday show or something. All right, what are we looking at? So we're gonna do minimum revenue $2,000, minimum rate per mile 280, and let's do a search around Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and let's do 250 miles. That'll get Dallas and a lot. That'll get a lot of areas. 250 air miles around Oklahoma City. And oh, you know what? Let's go in here. Let's edit the search. We're already looking at direct shipper. Let's do team. No, we don't want to see team stuff. So this is dry van solo stuff that I can haul. And let's sort by revenue. Is it sorting by revenue? There we go. All right, Duncanville, Texas to Spanaway, Washington. It's only paying $3.13 a mile. It's paying 10 grand because it's 3,301 miles. Now, it's not 3,300 miles to go from Dallas to Spanaway, Washington. The reason it's such high mileage is because there's 6 extra stops on it. So it's got you bouncing all over the place. That is not a good load. 313, 3.13 times 0.7. That's $2.19 a mile. That would be a decent load. Not amazing, but a decent load. Like a pretty good load. A couple months ago before the fuel prices shot up to where they're at. Now you're paying like $7 a gallon for fuel over in Washington. So yeah, that's not good. My recommendation right now, if you don't really fully understand the business side of being an owner operator, if you're just one of those owner operators is just kind of winging the business side of it, you're mainly just a company truck driver that just so happens to own their own trucking company. That's most owner operators, is that they don't really understand the business side. If you're one of those owner operators that doesn't really grasp the business side, you don't understand the business very well, avoid the West Coast. Those insanely high fuel prices on the West Coast will crush you. Stay away. So let's look through here and see what we got. Mesquite, Texas to Orange, Connecticut, $3.53 a mile. Again, all the prices you see on here are full rate. We get about 70% of whatever you see on here. Duncanville, Texas to Apopka, Florida. That is garbage. Florida is a really, like, that's terrible. You need to make a lot of money to go to, dead freight areas like Florida and Colorado. You're going to have some massive deadhead after you deliver that load. Wichita, Kansas to Kent, Washington, 21,000 machine parts. This is... I'm not seeing any like really amazing loads on here. What I think is happening is a bunch of these cheap crap loads, their prices have been increased because of the really high fuel prices, and they're still cheap crap, but the prices look better now. if you're not looking at these loads in context of how much our costs have gone up over the last month or two, then you might mistakenly think that these are good loads. 376 a mile, but it's going to Colorado. You're going to be deadheading like 700 miles to get your next load. So that is not a good load. And there's a Florida load for 344 a mile. I usually remove Colorado and Florida and Alaska and a lot of other places from my destination list because I just don't even want to see that crap on the load board. Because they're trying to move these loads into dead freight markets at slightly higher rates than normal loads. I'm not sure if I finished saying what I was going to say earlier, but one of the things that I'm noticing, this is a thought that I tried to explain earlier and I got sidetracked. This is a thought is I'm seeing a lot of line haul loads on the board. These VAM and CGI agencies, I'm seeing not only a lot of just normal loads from them, but I'm seeing a lot of dedicated runs. That tells me that the freight market is picking up. That could mean that the freight volume is increasing, or it could mean that the number of trucks is decreasing, which I know that uh, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Department of Homeland Security and lots of other government law enforcement agencies are cracking down on illegal immigrants, especially illegal immigrants in trucking. So that we are likely seeing the number of trucks going down because of that crackdown on people who are illegally in the country, people who are driving around, illegally. They're actually enforcing the laws. So that's awesome. So that side of the equation, the number of trucks is going down. I'm not sure if the freight volume is picking up though. But usually we're not going to see more line haul runs because of immigration and customs enforcement. Because where are all of the illegal immigrants? Are they driving for UPS? No. UPS is not hiring illegal immigrants. What about Saya? Are they hiring illegal immigrants? No, Saya is not hiring illegal immigrants. Um, where are the illegal immigrants working in the trucking industry? Over the road. They're not doing line haul jobs. They're doing over the road. So if they are, if the number of over the road trucks is going down because they're, getting all these illegals out of the trucking industry, is that going to increase the number of line haul loads? No, it's not. It's not. Now, there might be over the road companies that were hauling overflow for line haul that are going out of business or they don't have the trucks to do it anymore. And so now those overflow loads are being covered by someone else. Maybe, Landstar is picking up some of that business. Who knows? But it's not going to directly increase the number of loads line haul companies are getting. It's not going to have a direct impact on them. We could indirectly see more line haul loads on Landstar's load board because the companies that were hauling it before don't have as many trucks, or the company altogether has gone out of business because like the entire company was illegals. All right. I'm not seeing anything amazing. There are some decent loads on here. Tuttle, Oklahoma to Midland, Texas. Another thought. I've actually received several text messages, phone calls, and emails over the last 2 to 3 weeks with Landstar agents offering me not just loads, but dedicated runs. I think I got a contact on this Tuttle, Oklahoma to Midland, Texas. Let's look at this load. I'm pretty sure that I was contacted by someone. This load looks familiar. Tuttle, Oklahoma to Midland, Texas. This is a max weight hazmat load. Let me look through my text messages. Let me read you. This is not, I don't think this is the Tuttle, Oklahoma one, but let me give you an example of the dedicated run offers I've gotten. This was on Friday, I think. No, Thursday. This was Thursday. Hi, we have a dedicated flatbed project with one daily load, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., from Fletcher, Oklahoma to Round Rock, Texas. The commodity is sheetrock weighing 45,500 pounds. And it can be a 48 or 53 foot flatbed. And you need 8 tarps. The rate is $1,300. Looking for dedicated carriers for this route. That is cheap garbage. That is terrible. All right, let me keep scrolling through here. I get so many messages. Good morning. Are we looking to get loaded out of Missouri? We have available loads for dedicated account out of Riverside, Missouri to Grand Prairie, Texas, plus a backhaul if available. And want more details, please give us a call when you are available. We can get you loaded and rolling as early as this evening. So, a dedicated account from Riverside, Missouri to Grand Prairie, Texas. It doesn't give any details on the load. I think I looked this load up and it was cheap crap. What's this? Oh. That was another. I was checking to see what the other parking places charge down in southeast Oklahoma City, and they were charging $200 a month. I was paying $100 a month, and they jacked it up to $125 a month. And the place across the street from them is charging $200 a month. Okay, Olathe, Kansas to Tuttle, Oklahoma. That might be the load that I'm thinking of. It's paying $780 on the full rate. You only get about 70% of that. What is that? $500? 780 times 0.7 is $546. That, like, who negotiates this shit? It's going to take you like 2 days to do that load. It's not a very big mileage run, but it's a max weight load, 40,000 pounds, paying $546 that you're going to be on for 2 damn days. You're going to be making $275 a day gross to the truck. Then you have expenses coming out of that. I think I was making more than that when I was an employee at my last job. Um, All right, let me pause. Actually, let's switch it over to this. Let me pull up my email. Those are I didn't read off all of the text messages that I got from agents. All right, here's one April 2nd. When was April 2nd? That was Thursday. Ramses Marte. We have 2 to 3 shipments per day scheduled through 2026, all originating from Bessie, Oklahoma. All shipments are tile grout palletized and load on 53-foot dry vans or reefer. Weight is approximately 25 to 43,000 pounds. Shipping hours are 8 to 3. Load dates Monday through Friday. Pallet count varies. Clean, no touch freight. First come, first serve. Appointments, destinations are West Palm Beach, Florida. They do not give the rates on this. So these are max weight grout, loads of tile grout going from Bessie, Oklahoma to West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm pretty sure West Palm Beach, Florida is down in the Miami area, which is really, really South Florida. All right, what other emails have I gotten? Um, what the? Oh, it was the farmer's insurance person, Luis Contreras. Does not English very well. And I was sitting there reading. I thought that might be a Landstar agent email, and I was reading it, and I was like, "What in the hell does that even mean?" And I had to open up the email and get the full context to like translate what in the hell he was trying to say. Hmm. All right. So I think that's all of the dedicated stuff. I normally get phone calls, text messages, and emails offering me just loads. And I want you to think about this for a second. If a Landstar agent has a good load, are they going to do cold call sales to move that load? Or are they just going to put it on the load board and it's going to disappear in like under 15 minutes? What kind of loads do Landstar agents do cold call sales on? Loads that are negotiated at rates they should not have negotiated. These are bottom of the barrel garbage loads that they cannot move. If a Landstar agent is doing cold call sales to move a load, then it's a bad load. So as soon as I get a Landstar agent on the phone, like Landstar agents are not supposed to call me. You can go into your profile at Landstar and choose your contact preferences. And they're only supposed to text or email me. They're not supposed to call me. Landstar has told me that whenever they pull up my profile, it doesn't show my phone number because they're not supposed to call me. But they have access to other things where they can go look up my truck number and find my phone number. And that's what the Landstar agents are doing that are calling me. So I'm not a very pleasant person when Landstar agents call me. I can be really rude. As soon as I find out that it's a Landstar agent that's calling me trying to offer me some crap load, I don't even let them finish their spiel. I'll just say I'm not interested and hang up. That's about as polite as I will be on the phone with them. I've had agents call me like 3 times a day for like several days in a row, and I got tired of it and I just went off on them. I can't remember the agency code is RB something agency. They were constantly calling me trying to move loads out of the Wichita, Kansas area. And they were cheap, just terrible loads. And I just got tired of them calling me every day. And I finally just went off on the guy about how cheap the loads are and how I've told them every day for the last week that I'm not interested, and you still keep calling me. You don't even like have the decency to look at who you're calling and see that you've been calling me every day for the last week. Stop calling me. Like I've been really rude to agents before. All right, what do we got going on here? We were looking at that Tuttle to Midland. I think that's a dedicated run that they've contacted me on, but I didn't find it. Maybe I'm getting confused with that other Tuttle dedicated run from like the Kansas City area that I was contacted about. Fort Smith to Blythewood, South Carolina. Ooh, Colorado. Colorado, 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 Colorado. And this load board is doing that crap where when you try to scroll down, it just flips back up. That makes it so confusing to look through these loads. Ooh, Terrell, Texas to El Paso. This is the DDB agency. This is Don Flores. So this is something that I'm wanting to check. I haven't done it yet. Drop and hook, live load, no touch, no stops. I was wanting to check a few of the agencies that I normally work with and see if their prices have come up. So Terrell, Texas to El Paso, Texas. Dawn Flores. It does not look like her rates have changed. And she's filled out the fuel surcharge, but it's not showing what it is. Dawn Flores is awesome. So let's do that. This load is not very good. So let's go up here, edit the search. Let's clear all the search criteria and let's go to agent and we're going to put in some agency codes. Let's look and see how much those window loads are paying. The last window load that I hauled was after the fuel prices went up by a significant amount. Fuel prices have gone up by like $1 to $1.50 a gallon. And they did not increase the fuel surcharge. And I asked them to increase the fuel surcharge and they basically told me to go screw myself. The guy laughed at me on the phone. He's like, yeah, he didn't like, it wasn't too rude. Like, they're agents, you ask them for stuff, they'll just laugh and hang up. Like, they're really, really rude agents. And most people you talk with when you're calling these Landstar agencies, you're not actually talking with the Landstar agent most of the time. You're talking with somebody that they're paying like $5 an hour to answer the phone. You're basically talking to a secretary most of the time. Okay, so let's see what we got going on here. So Staten, Oregon to Las Cruces, New Mexico, 31 stops, paying $3.46 a mile, $9,163. This is paying basically the exact same amount that it was paying 2 months ago. There has been no increase in price. So the window loads are not increasing their prices. What is this crap? They have a round trip load? It's going Staten, Oregon to Kent, Washington, and then you load again in Kent and you come back to Staten. It's not paying very well. Sorry, I was shaking my leg and it's got the whole desk shaking. Whenever I'm sitting down, I shake my legs. Like, I can't stand sitting. Normally, I'll pace around in my room whenever I'm talking on the phone or anything. I pace around and walk almost all the time unless I have to sit down. And when I'm sitting down, I can't just sit still. So I'm always sitting there shaking my legs. But I try not to do that when I'm making a video because it just makes everything bounce around. So yeah, the window loads, Geldwin is just sticking to their guns on the contract rates, and they're not raising the prices. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to be heading up to the Pacific Northwest because that was about the only thing that paid decent out of there. It didn't pay very well. It was about the only thing that was profitable coming out of that area. And now with the insane fuel prices, they're not increasing the rates on those loads. So now there's nothing really profitable coming out of that area. We'll keep an eye on it. But right now it looks like no bueno. All right, so let's do a search for Dawn Flores, the DDB agency. She just has that one single load. She doesn't move a lot of loads. Or maybe she's got a whole bunch of loads that she just moves directly without putting them on the board. I have no idea. But she doesn't post a lot of loads on the board. All right. Which is really sad because she's such an awesome agent. I really wish that she, did more business. Maybe she does a ton of business. Maybe she doesn't post many loads on the board. I have no idea. But she's awesome. Who else we got? JQL agency, the Google account. Let's see what's going on with them. They used to pay really well, and now most of their loads pay crap. Let's see here. They move a lot of team loads. Basically, you know what I need to do? Let's do the additional criteria. Let's edit the search, additional criteria, and let's get rid of the team loads because teams actually move product, whereas solo drivers like me, we haul garbage for the Google account. All right, so direct shipper, JQL, flags, team, yes. Okay, I did team, yes. I meant to do team, no. So they don't have a single team load listed? That's crazy. Most of their loads are usually team. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Just mainly just trying to get a feel if they're increasing their rates for the high fuel prices. And I'm really not, it does not look like their prices have really changed that much. These look fairly normal. Yeah. Atlanta to the Dalles, Oregon, which is basically Portland. The Dalles, Oregon, the Dallas, Oregon. I don't know how you pronounce it. I've had a lot of people, and it has an extra stop on it somewhere. It's only paying $2.96 a mile on the full rate. This is like the same kind of crap that, like that is a terrible rate per mile for that load. That is absolutely horrible. Like I wouldn't even haul that load 2 months ago when fuel prices were a lot cheaper than they are right now. That was a cheap load back then, and now that's just ridiculous. So it doesn't look like Google has increased their prices. Let's do another agent here. So we looked at Dawn, we looked at Geldwin. So Dawn is Maddox. So we looked at the Maddox account. We looked at the Geldwin window account. Let's look at Louisville. Let's look at the LTL agency. LTL has the Ream Rude account out of Fort Smith, Arkansas, Louisville, Texas. Holy crap. They only have one single load listed. Pine Hill, Alabama to Fort Smith, Arkansas. Pine Hill, I think that's where there's a big paper plant. Pine Hill, Alabama is out in the middle of no damn where. I think the only thing in that town's a paper plant. No comments. 30,000 pounds. It's just got a generic weight on it. Yeah, let me zoom in on this. Pine Hill, Alabama is out in the middle of no damn where. I'm pretty sure the only thing in that town is a paper mill. And I'm exaggerating. I'm sure there are other things in that town, but yeah, that place is out in the middle of nowhere. That is a terrible rate for driving out in the middle of nowhere. Wow. That's pretty crazy that they only have one single load on the board. I was wanting to get an idea of what's going on with them because they just recently negotiated a new contract with Ream Rude, and it was a significant reduction in price. It was like 50 to 75 cents a mile reduction in what they were paying. Because I booked a load with them, and they called me back like 15 minutes after I booked the load. And they said, oh, we screwed up, and we booked the load at our old contract rates, and we just signed a new contract this week, and we're going to need to reduce the price of that load by $2,000. The load was paying like $7,000 or $8,000, and they were going to drop it from like $8,000 down to $6,000. And I was like, yeah, no, thank you. You can go ahead and cancel that load off of me and repost it onto the load board and find somebody else to play your games. So yeah, the Ream Root account just went to absolute dog crap. And now with the increased fuel prices, they're probably not going to be able to move those loads. I don't know why these agents negotiate such ridiculously cheap rates. I know that the companies do really high pressure, negotiations with these agents. And most of these agents just fold under the pressure. They will not sit there and like stick to their guns on prices. They just take whatever price these companies will agree to. They're not trying to get them to pay more. They agree to whatever the hell they want. It's crazy. I hate brokers. Brokers should not exist. Brokers have been replaced in almost every other industry except for trucking. There used to be stockbrokers. You don't have to deal with stockbrokers anymore. Now you can just order stocks directly through apps and stuff like that. There used to be call operators where whenever you wanted to make a phone call, you'd have to speak with a broker, an operator to, get connected. Technology has replaced them. Almost all brokers of any kind have been replaced with technology. But in the trucking industry, we still have to deal with these jackasses. They've tried to replace car salesmen. They've tried to replace real estate agents. But we have laws that force you to use car salesmen and real estate agents. That's the reason those brokers still exist. I wish they would get rid of that crap. All right, what's another agency we want to look at here? We've seen a lot of CGI and VAM loads. Those are agencies that have LTL contracts. Let's go ahead and look at CGI. See what's going on with them. It does look like their rates are coming up. So it looks like they're probably paying increased fuel surcharge. Their fuel surcharge on their Saya contracts used to be amazing. Oh my goodness. To give you an idea of how amazing they were, whenever I first started hauling Saya loads with the CGI agency, I was hauling them from Grand Prairie, Dallas, Texas up to the Seattle, Portland area, and they were paying like $1 a mile fuel surcharge. This was back when fuel surcharge was normally like 35 cents a mile. That was like normal fuel surcharge was paying like 35 cents a mile. They were paying like $1 a mile fuel surcharge, which was shifting the percentage. Instead of getting like 70% of the load, I was getting like 75, 80% of the load because of how much of the load was paying fuel surcharge. Because I get 100% of the fuel surcharge and 65% of the line haul. And so much of the pay was fuel surcharge that I was getting like 75, 80% of the load. It was awesome. And then they negotiated a new contract. And then they negotiated a new contract. And they just kept negotiating worse and worse contracts. Now it's got to the point where the pay on the loads is just not that great. But it does look like the prices on these loads have gone up with the increased fuel. Let's see. Oh my goodness, that one is really cheap. Let's look at this. Florida, 350 a mile for Florida is terrible. But let's see if they have a fuel surcharge rate posted on this. They do, but it does not. This load board doesn't show what it is. I was curious to see what the rate of fuel surcharge they're paying is, to see if it's like 80, 90 cents a mile like it's supposed to be. Let's look at one more and see if it has the fuel surcharge rate on it. No. I could go look at the other load board and figure out what it is, but I don't really feel like doing that. But it does look like, just skimming through the prices, it looks like the prices are higher than normal. So they're not just sticking to their contract prices. It looks like they are increasing the fuel surcharge and maybe even the line haul as well on some of these loads. But the geniuses behind this load board don't give me enough information to be able to figure that out, even though obviously the Landstar agent is putting that information into the load board. The people behind the load board choose not to display that information to me. All right, let's look at another agency. Let's look at VAM. Let's see if this has a fuel surcharge on it. It's not showing me what the damn price is. Some of these look like they're paying good rates, but they're short, like 200-300 mile runs. And $3.50 a mile is not a good rate per mile for a 200-300 mile run. I'm trying to scroll down and it just keeps scrolling. Like, this load board is so janky. A lot of these rates are just complete ass. $3.77 a mile to go to Florida, Miami, Florida. That is terrible. Yeah, almost all these loads are mediocre to bad. That one looks pretty good. Wyoming, Michigan. to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, paying $5 a mile for about a 600-mile load. I just got a load alert. GTO agency. Irving, Texas to Irving, Texas, $467 a mile. Let's see what this is. $12,800 load. In the comments, it says easy load with a very good fuel surcharge. What are the 2 additional stops? Let's edit the search. Let's go to agent. What was that, GTO? And let's pull it up here. Here it is. This is the load that I just got a load alert on. All right. So it's going from Dallas to I can't go to LA. I'm not legal to drive in California, so I can't do this load. So it's going from Dallas to Anaheim, then you reload in Anaheim and go back to Dallas. Paying $467 a mile. And it has loading and unloading pay. So it's a driver load, driver unload. It's electronics, 38,000 pounds. If I was legal to drive in California, I would take that load. It's a 2-week load, the 17th through the 29th. But I don't mind sitting around. I would take that load. I'm curious as to what the fuel surcharge is because they say easy load with very good fuel surcharge. Very good? I'm curious to know what they think very good is. So it says van or van with lift gate. This might actually require a lift gate. They don't put enough info in the comments here. There's a lot of things that suggest that this is a highly specialized load. First of all, it's paying a very high rate. Secondly, it has an abnormal amount of time on the load. 2 weeks that you're going to be on a load for that you should be able to do in a single week. And it has driver load and unload pay on it. It has this van with lift gate as a possible trailer type. All of these things suggest to me that this is going to take a very long time to load and a very long time to unload. And it could require a lot of extra securement materials. Like you might have to have a whole bunch of straps, blankets. You might need ramps or a lift gate. And this person is putting none of that information in the comments. They're just putting in the comments, good load, bro. Like, why would you even put something that ridiculous in the comments? Like, this is the kind of stupid crap that you would expect somebody that was working at McDonald's last week to post on the load board. Like, good load, bro. That's basically what the comments say. They don't discuss anything about the driver loading and unloading, the long amount of time that you're going to be on the load, the lift gate that might be a requirement. None of that's discussed. And that's what the comments are for, is to explain all of this crap up here. Not for good load, bro. These agents, man. All right. So I can't do that load. Even if I wanted to do that load, which I'm interested in that load. I would definitely do that load if it didn't have any crazy special requirements. Even if it was driver load and unload, yeah, I might be willing to do it. Maybe. It depends on like how much of a driver load and unload it is. Okay, what other agencies are we going to look at here? Let me think. Let me think of agencies. Now, I will not work for this guy. He's blacklisted. Kind of. Like, he's not really blacklisted. I only have two agencies that are just flat out blacklisted. I don't care if they offered me $1 million a week to haul loads for them. There's no way under any situation, under any circumstances, that I would ever do business with them again. There's only two agencies. And I can't remember their agency codes off the top of my head, so I don't want to say them and be wrong. But I've talked about them in the past, and I've given their agency codes in the past. But let's check Lee. I had a really bad experience with Lee, and he's not fully blacklisted, but I'm not likely ever going to work for him again because he did not pay me the contract minimum. He has the Walmart contract. And he's notorious. I thought that maybe he just screwed me over on the contract, but during one of my cabs classes, he was talked about in the cabs class. I was only in the cabs class with 4 people. It was me and 3 other people. One of the people was a brand new driver that just started with Landstar within like the last 90 days. And the other 2 people in the cabs class with me had been with Landstar for like 15, 20 years or more. And those 2 guys that have been with Landstar for like 15, 20 years or more, we got on the topic of dedicated runs, and I talked about that Walmart dedicated and how like he did not pay me the contract minimum. They just used me. They abused me as a local driver. They're paying me by the mile, like $2.50 a mile. But they were using me as a local driver around the Dallas area. So I only got like 1,000 miles. And the contract minimum is $4,500. At the end of the week, they refused to pay me the contract minimum because I did so few miles. Even though I was forced dispatched the whole week, I did every run they told me to do. But I only did like 1,000 miles because it was all local stuff in Dallas. I think I had one single load out of the Dallas area that took me down to like San Antonio or Round Rock or something like that. A couple hundred miles away from Dallas. And I think I did, it wasn't 1,000 miles. I think I did around 1,300, maybe 1,500 miles on the week, something like that. But at the end of the week, they complained about Lee, the agent, told me that Walmart complained about the few miles that I did, and they did not want to pay the contract minimum of like $4,500. So he only paid me for 4 days instead of 5 days. He did not pay me the contract minimum. And I got really, really, really pissed off about that. I didn't tell him that. He just ranted and raved on the phone about how much of a complete worthless piece of shit that I am. And I didn't say a word to him. I just sat there and let him rant and rave. And then after like a couple of minutes of him just telling me that I'm the worst driver in the world and, this is the reason that I'm not paying you the contract minimum and just belittling me. Like, there are a lot of people in business that will they bully people. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to bully me. That doesn't work with me. Like, I'm not the type of person that if you try to bully me, I back down and agree to whatever you say. That's what most people are. If somebody gets confrontational with me, it takes a tremendous amount of restraint for me not to just like blow up on them. Like I'm an extremely confrontational person. It takes a tremendous amount of restraint for me to just not like just start swinging on somebody. So like he was going off on me and I wasn't saying anything. I just let him vent. And I said, well, it sounds like maybe I shouldn't do this contract anymore. And then his whole attitude changed. Like, he was expecting me to, like he escalated up to here, and he was expecting me to, like, come up and meet him. And when I didn't come up and meet him, when I just stayed down here, his whole attitude changed. And he went from belittling me and telling me that I was like the worst driver ever and I didn't deserve to get paid. And, this is the reason I'm not paying you and all kinds of crap like that. his attitude completely shifted, and he calmed down and he said, "Yeah, I'm so sorry that I have to do this to you." He started apologizing. He started telling me that it was Walmart. The Walmart rep does this to him all the time, and he he said, if you are willing to keep going, or if you ever want to come back and do this contract again, I'll run you out of Plano, or I forget what terminal he said he was going to run me out of. But instead of Sanger, the terminal right next to Dallas, he said he always has problems with people when he runs them out of Sanger. They don't get very many miles, and then Walmart refuses to pay the contract minimum. And he's afraid of pissing off Walmart and losing the contract, so he just bows to whatever they say. He started telling me all this stuff. Like, at first, he was just telling me I'm a worthless piece of crap. And then when I didn't escalate to his level, then he completely shifted. He told me that he really liked me, and he had great communication with me. He had no problems with me. He would really like for me to continue the contract. And, if I want to come back, he'll run me out of Plainview. Just hit him up whenever I want to come back. And I've never contacted him since then. I will not likely ever do business with him again. If somebody does not, do what they promise they're going to do, then that's a trust issue. I can never trust him again. I'm like, we agreed, we had a contract that said that you were going to pay me this, and you just decided you weren't going to pay me that. Like, I can never trust him again. So he doesn't have any loads on the load board, which is normal. Like, all of his stuff is dedicated. So he rarely ever posts anything on the load board. If he ever posts anything on the load board, it's because somebody left the account and he's trying to find a replacement. All right, let's see who else we got. I don't even know if Lee is still like in business. He might have lost the Walmart account for all I know. I have no idea. I haven't seen him post anything on the load board in a long time. But that's kind of normal because people have been really desperate the last few years. So he probably hasn't had a lot of people leaving the Walmart account because people are just so desperate. They'll take anything. I don't care how bad the pay is on a dedicated account. People will just hop on it. I can't think of any other agencies off the top of my head. So we should probably wrap up the video. Oh, damn it. I forgot to switch over back to the load board thing. How long have I been on this where you haven't been able to see the load board? I think I've said out loud what was on the load board. Like, there's nothing on the search results for the LEE agency here. There's no search results. Who was the agent I looked at before that? Was it VAM and CGI? I'm not sure if I switch screens back over. Sorry, I forgot to switch the screen back over. But this is a VAM agency. Let me scroll through that really quick. Oh, it's glitching out. And now let me do the CGI agency. And I think you saw all the other ones. Let's do CGI really quick. Let me scroll through those. And I don't know if you can see that, but it's trying to scroll down and it's just like freaking out. All right, let me pause this and I'm going to check the news and just make sure that there's not some big crazy event that happened while I've been making the video. And then we'll talk about current events for a minute. So just a sec. All right, I'm not seeing any major headlines, but our state-run media is not great about reporting actual news events. It's mainly political propaganda and Inquirer level stuff. TMZ type stuff. Like, mainstream media posts a lot of celebrity gossip crap. Like, I really don't care what some actor has to say about some political whatever. Like, why are we conferring with, Tom Cruise or some other actor about their, what are their thoughts on the geopolitics of Asia? Like, why are we asking celebrities about what they think about geopolitics or politics in general, or anything? But apparently, the state-run media thinks that that is a newsworthy event. So let's do a. I could talk forever about what's going on in the world right now. It is crazy. We like every time in my life when I think, okay, this is the defining event of my life, a new event happens. Like when I was really young, the massive event that happened in my life, the first major event that I remember in my life was the invasion of Iraq in like 1991. That was a really big deal. Like I lived out in the country. I've been poor my whole life. We had like 3 channels and we were always in bed by 9 or 10 p.m. When we invaded Iraq in 1991, when the United States invaded Iraq in 1991, they had news coverage of it. And we stayed up until like 2 o'clock in the morning watching the news. And I remember it was, we had school and work the next day. I was like, in 1991, I would have been like 11 years old. So it was a really big deal for me to stay up till like 2 o'clock in the morning watching the news. And we finally just went to bed. Like it was a really big deal. That was the big event in my life. And then there were other events that were more local events. They weren't like national, like world. The invasion of Iraq was a world event. We had the Oklahoma City bombing. I remember where I was at when that bombing happened. I was in the 8th grade when that bombing happened. And I remember it was at the end of the school year because we were actually on a tour of the high school. So 8th grade is middle school. I went to a middle school that was just 7th and 8th graders. And then next year the 8th graders were going to move over to the high school. So they had taken us over to the high school and we were supposed to do a tour of the high school where they show us where everything's at. And right when we got there, the bombing had already happened. It happened, I think, while we were driving from the middle school to the high school. I think the bombing happened while we were driving. So when we got there, they had us all stand in the hallway next to the administration offices because they were trying to figure out what to do. They didn't know if they were going to cancel classes. Like all of the people that were supposed to be giving us a tour of the high school were in the administration offices and they were all like talking about what in the hell to do. They were watching the TV and they were like trying to figure out what in the hell to do. Like, how big of an event is this? Like, do we need to send everybody home? Do we finish the school day like normal? Like, they didn't know what to do. And they just had us standing in the hallway while they were trying to figure out what to do. And after standing out in the hallway for, I don't know how long, 20 or 30 minutes, they finally told our teachers, just take them back to the middle school while we figure this out. So we never got our tour. We just went back to the middle school. I can't even remember what happened the rest of the day. I'm not sure if we went home early that day or what happened. But that was more of a local event. It made international news, but it was more of a local, United States event. What was the next big event? The May 3rd tornado in Oklahoma City. So whenever I moved from the small town in Oklahoma where I lived to Oklahoma City, so I graduated high school. And then about a week after I graduated high school, I moved out of the small town that I lived in, and I moved to South Oklahoma City. The house that I moved into was about 200 feet from the border of Moore, Oklahoma. It was at the south edge of Oklahoma City. Moore, Oklahoma is like right up against the edge of South Oklahoma City. The main devastation of the tornado was right there at the northern edge of Moore, Oklahoma. So you could walk out of the house that I moved into and walk down to the corner of the street and look out and see like damaged houses and stuff. And that tornado happened like a week before. No, it was like 2 weeks before I moved down there. 2 or 3 weeks before I moved down there is when the tornado happened. It happened May 3rd, and I think I moved in there like May 20th or something like that is whenever I moved. But I moved like right next to where the tornado happened. I wasn't there when the tornado happened, but I moved in like a couple weeks after it happened. What was the next big event? There's probably some ones I can't remember, but 9/11. I remember most everything about what happened on 9/11. I was living in Reno, Nevada at the time, and I was working at a call center. I think I was selling AT&T wireless phones at a call center. I was a salesperson for AT&T Wireless, working at some call center. I can't remember what the company was that I worked for. It was an outsourcer. But anyway, I was carpooling with a guy that worked in a different department. I think he was selling Bank One credit cards, but his shift started like 2 hours before mine. So I got there like 2 hours early for work, and I was just sitting in the break room. It's just me and like two other people just sitting there kind of watching the TV. And I was a smoker back then. So I had gone out and they had a really big window. They had a door where you could walk outside, but there was a massive window. So you could still sit in there and like watch the TV from outside while you're smoking. And I was just sitting there smoking and, kind of like watching the TV. And all of a sudden there was like news on the TV. And I was like, did somebody change the channel? And I was sitting there watching it, and it was showing the World Trade Center burning. And I opened up the door. I sat there and watched it for a minute or two. And I remember I opened up the door and I was like, is that news or is that some TV show or movie? And the people that were in there were like, I don't know. So I, kept smoking and I was watching it, finished my cigarette. I went in and sat down, and I was like, is this really happening? And they were like, I think so. And we started talking about it, and we're like, wow. And they didn't know at that point what was going on. They thought that just like some random plane hit a building. They're like, man, maybe the pilot fell asleep, or maybe they had a malfunction. They really had no idea what was going on. They thought that just like some random plane just ran into a building in New York City. And while they were sitting there, talking about it, trying to figure out what was going on, that's when the second plane hit. And they were like, okay, so this wasn't an accident. And like everybody's demeanor shifted at that point. It was a pretty crazy day. People got really on edge, and the calls completely stopped coming in at the call center. People were not calling in trying to get a Bank One credit card, and people were not calling in trying to get an AT&T wireless phone. The calls completely stopped. So within like an week, by the time my shift was supposed to start, nobody was on the phone anymore. Everybody was out in the break area. There were like 50 plus people standing around in the break area watching TV and stuff. And all the managers were trying to figure out what to do. And they just sent everybody home because there were no calls coming in for the day. But anyway, I thought that was going to be the biggest event of my life. And then we had the crash of 2008, 2009, where we came within a couple of hours of the entire world financial system collapsing. That was bigger than 9/11. And I don't remember much of anything happening between like 2010 and 2020. I can't remember any big events happening for that approximately 10-year period. There might have been one, but I can't remember. And then in 2020, we had the lockdowns. That was a massive event. We are still to this day feeling the repercussions of the lockdowns. What's happened since the lockdowns? Has there been another major event since then? We had Russia invade Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine during the 2010s as well, I believe. They annexed Crimea at some point in the 2010s, like 2014, 2016, somewhere in that area. So that's one of the events I forgot about in the 2010s. Um, Russia invading Ukraine was a really big event. What else happened? Um, Hamas, the Gazans, the Palestinians had that terrorist attack. Was it October 7th? The October 7th attack. One of the largest terrorist attacks ever um, against Israel, where they murdered, raped, tortured, kidnapped hundreds or thousands of Israelis. Um, that was a big event. And then Israel committing genocide on the Palestinians in revenge was also a big event. And then a year after that, no, wait. After that, then Israel attacked Iran, and we had the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. And then the United States got involved at the end of the 12-day war and did one single bombing mission with bunker buster bombs and said that they destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities, which was not true. And then a year later, the United States and Israel attacked Iran again, and that's the current conflict we're in. And when we attacked Iran, Iran disrupted, they didn't shut down, they disrupted the Strait of Hormuz to the point where the insurance companies pulled insurance for travel through the Strait of Hormuz. So now no one's willing to risk going through the Strait of Hormuz. So it's shut down, but it's only because of Iran disrupting traffic through there. Iran is not really, they don't have ships out there enforcing a closure. If they did, they would get destroyed. You know, if they had ships out there trying to board ships and stuff like that, they would get destroyed. So they're just firing missiles at ships that attempt to go through the strait that they don't want going through. And that has caused a disruption to the point where almost all traffic has stopped through the Strait of Hormuz. And it is cold in here. So anyway, that's the point where we're in right now. And this event that's happening right now, you know, Israel and the United States having a little war against Iran, that's not that big of a deal. In the grand scheme of the major events that's happened in my life, that's not really that big of a deal. But the Strait of Hormuz being disrupted, basically closed down, that is a major, major event. It's not only approximately 20% of the world's oil supply, petroleum supply, goes through the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know how much of that 20% is being disrupted. There's also a lot of things that are used in fertilizer. About 35% of the world's fertilizer products go through the Strait of Hormuz. You know, they use like natural gas in fertilizer and urea, and what are some other things used in fertilizer? I can't remember all the stuff, but there's a whole bunch of it in that area that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And there's about 35% of the world's, you know, another place where a large amount of urea is in like Ukraine, that's also being disrupted. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I would think that there's somebody that's manipulating the world, that's trying to cause like mass population loss. Like they're trying to disrupt systems to cause mass loss of life. It's almost like somebody's intentionally doing this crap because let me look this up real quick. How much of the world's urea comes from Ukraine? No, it says urea is a minor. There's some place that's involved in war where a lot of the world's urea comes from. Ukraine is a minor exporter, significantly less than 1%. So let's see. World urea. What country am I thinking of that is involved in some kind of, is it Russia? Yes, it's Russia. So it's not Ukraine, it's Russia. Major exporters of urea. Russia is number one. Who is number two? Iran. Who is number three? China. Who is number four? Saudi Arabia. So right now, out of the top four countries that export urea, three of them are directly involved in conflicts. Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia are directly involved in a war right now. China, another one of the world's largest, they're number three. They are indirectly involved in two wars. But their exports should not be disrupted. Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, their exports are all being disrupted right now. The top five countries, Russia, Iran, China, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, accounted for 62% of total exports in 2024. So, yeah, we're dealing with major disruption to the global supply chain, major disruption to industrialized agriculture. These are things that we're not going to feel the direct impact from. Like, we are seeing high fuel prices right now, but we are not seeing fuel scarcity. We're not seeing food scarcity. We are not likely going to see an actual, like, physical impact of these disruptions, scarcity, for months. It might be next year because farmers, they already have their fertilizer for this planting season. It's going to be the next, then the food has to grow. And then it's the next planting season where they're going to be short. And then we're not going to be expecting the food from that planting season for like a long time. So it might not be for a minimum of 6 months, maybe a year, until we start seeing a reduction in the food supply globally because of all of this supply chain issue, and the shortages in fertilizer. And you may be thinking, oh, well, they can just plant stuff without fertilizer. Well, there's the profit margin for farmers is very thin. I don't know what their exact profits are, but they don't make a whole lot of money on a per acre basis. The only way that they make money is with massive numbers of acres, lots and lots of land that they're farming. So, let's say that they're making like $400 profit per acre. Well, they need a lot of acres to be able to cover the cost of their $1 million, farming equipment. Like, every piece of machinery they have is probably $1 million. Like, farm equipment is incredibly expensive. So if their profit margin is only like $400, well, if they plant on that acre of land without fertilizer, it might not produce enough for it to be profitable. It might be a loss. So in that situation, the farmers might just choose to not bother planting because they might actually lose money with all of the resources they have to put into growing the crops. With, they have to put a lot of resources into planting the crops and the pesticides and, then harvesting the crops and all that stuff. All that takes a lot of money. And they might not actually make any money out of it without fertilizer because it's going to reduce their crop yields. So what people have already started talking about, and something that I started talking about like as soon as this happened, is that they're probably going to have to subsidize the farmers to get the farmers to plant crops, because the farmers, it's just, they can't stay in business if they're going to run at a loss. Yes, they can plant crops. Yes, they can grow food without fertilizer, but they might actually lose money doing it, and that could drive them out of business. So to get them to actually be able to make money by planting food, we might have to have the government subsidize them. The government might have to pay them, $100 an acre or $200 an acre or something like that to plant crops. Otherwise, we could be looking at a real, I don't even want to try to speculate on there's so many things up in the air right now. There's a lot of really, really, really bad outcomes that can happen. And I don't want to get too crazy into the speculation because there's just so many, the situation is just so fluid right now. But to just give you some idea of how crazy the speculation can get, China has a plan to become the world superpower. This is not some hidden plan. It's public. They've been talking about it for decades. That is the reason that China has one of the largest militaries in the world right now. China's military used to be an absolute joke. And over the last few decades, they have become a military superpower. They now have the world's largest navy. They are, and that's a plan that they've been working on. And I can't remember the exact details of the plan, but this is a multi-decade plan. They have goals that they want to hit by 2045. They've had goals that are several decades out that they've been working on for decades. One of their stated goals was to take Taiwan by, I think, 2035. Was their plan, was to take Taiwan by 2035. Now, they refer to it as taking Taiwan back. For people who don't know, Taiwan has never been part of China. So China is not taking it back. It's just an invasion, and it's just them just conquering a country is what it is. They've said that they're going to invade and take over this country. But they refer to it as taking it back. Every piece of land that China has ever claimed throughout all of history, they think is part of China, and their grand plan is to take it all back. But Taiwan has never been part of China throughout all of their history that I'm aware of. So there's land that they're just gonna take. But yeah, China has very expansionist goals. And they basically are planning on taking over the world. They have some crazy ideas. They have a justification for taking the United States that they believe Native Americans, like me, for people who don't know, I'm Cherokee. Well, I'm part Cherokee. I'm a mutt. I'm a little bit of everything. But yeah, I'm part Cherokee. They think that the native peoples in the United States that were here before the Europeans invaded are actually Chinese. They think that they are people from China that came over here. They have weird theories to justify basically conquering the entire world. And that's their big grand plan that's, decades in the future. But let's talk about Taiwan. I think their initial time frame to take Taiwan might have been 2045, or it might have been 2035. I can't remember which one, but they kept moving the date up. It was like 2035, then they moved it up to something else, then something else, then something else. And they just recently moved up that date again, I think within the last month or two, to 2027. That basically means that China has told the world that they're going to invade Taiwan this year. And we are getting almost no news coverage on that. If they're going to take Taiwan by 2027, then they kind of need to invade them this year. Maybe they'll wait until next year. But China's basically said that they're going to invade Taiwan this year or next year. And there is a weather window to invade Taiwan. The seas are really rough in the winter. So it's not realistic for them to invade Taiwan in the winter because the waters are so rough that amphibious landings are not realistic. So they would have to rely almost solely on air to transport things to and from, which is much more difficult. Like you can move so much more stuff on ships than you can on aircraft. So the weather window, I believe, is from like April until like October or something like that. That's the weather window. Now, if they're going to invade, what part of that weather window are they going to invade in? Are they going to wait until the last minute, August, where they only have like a month or two of weather window left? Or are they going to invade at the beginning of the weather window where they have almost the entire weather window to operate in? They're most likely going to invade at the beginning of the weather window. So we could see China invading Taiwan within the next month or two, or it might be next year. And what's going to happen if China invades Taiwan? Well, the United States has promised Taiwan that they will come to their defense if China invades them. Who else have we made promises like that to? Ukraine. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine became one of the world's nuclear powers. They had the most nuclear weapons in the world. I think they were top 3. I can't remember exactly where they were at, but they had a lot of the Soviet nuclear weapons were in Ukraine. Well, the United States talked Ukraine into giving up all of their nuclear weapons. The United States made a promise to Ukraine. They said, we will come to your defense. You don't need nuclear weapons. You've got us. We will defend you against Russia and any other aggressors. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, did we come to their defense? The first time when Russia annexed Crimea? No. What about the second time? No. So what good is a United States promise? It's worthless. So just because we promised Taiwan that we would come to their defense if China invaded doesn't mean anything. It is highly unlikely that we would go to a war with China over Taiwan. It is extremely unlikely because China has a huge advantage over us because of how close Taiwan is to China and how far we would have to go. We would have to drag our supply lines over there, and China has a lot more Navy than we do. So yeah, it's even if we were willing to help Taiwan fight China, we definitely couldn't win a war against China. Best case scenario is that it would be a stalemate. But China has the ability to reach out and touch us. Iran might maybe have some missiles that they could potentially hit the United States mainland with. But they probably don't have very many of them. They couldn't do much. China can hit the U.S. mainland. If we went to a war with China, you should expect that we're actually going to feel the war in the United States, which is something that, the United States is not used to that. Very rarely do we ever get into wars in which, like, Dallas, Texas is getting bombed. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. New York City doesn't, get hit by bombs. At most, we deal with little terrorist attacks. But even that is really rare. So the people in the United States don't really suffer repercussions from their war machine. If we go to war with somebody like China, we are likely going to feel those repercussions here on the mainland. So, like, that's one of the possible things that could be happening in the near future. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and if everything just magically went back to normal tomorrow, we are still going to be feeling the repercussions of everything that's happened over the last month over in the Middle East. We are still going to be feeling those repercussions for years, likely, because there's already been a massive disruption in the supply chain with the Strait of Hormuz being closed or disrupted, however you want to word it. There's already been that massive disruption, like a month of that strait being closed. It's hard to convey to people how big of a deal that is. It's like about 20% of the world's petroleum and about 35% of the world's fertilizer just got shut off for a month. That's crazy. That's going to have a huge impact on the world. It's going to cause cascade failures through the global supply chain. It's going to cause shortages. And shortages cause panic buying. Shortages cause resellers. So resellers and panic buyers exacerbate any shortage issue. Panic buyers and resellers can create a shortage even if a shortage doesn't exist. But if you have an actual shortage and you have panic buying and you have resellers on top of that, it can turn a bad situation into a nightmare. We're likely going to see that happen. We're going to see real shortages. We're going to see panic buying, and we're going to see resellers. We're going to see assholes like coming up to the fuel pump and filling up like a 500-gallon, tank in their vehicle. We're going to see people going into the grocery store and spending like $2,000 buying out an entire section of whatever they think they can sell and make a lot of money off of. And there's going to be a lot more than, there's not just going to be one person doing that kind of stupid crap. There's going to be a lot of people doing that crap. So if everything were to magically stop and go back to normal tomorrow, we would still be dealing with the disruptions that have already happened. On top of the disruptions, we also have damage. There have been several oil tankers that have been damaged. It could take weeks or months for them to be fully repaired and be fully operational again. There are petroleum facilities that have been damaged. It could take weeks or months or years for them to be fully operational again. They've shut down a lot of the petroleum production. And it could take weeks or months for that to get turned all back on. And it's my understanding that whenever they do that, it causes permanent damage to those reservoirs. So they're never going to be able to pump out at the same rates that they were pumping out right now. It's going to be, if they get everything back online again, it's going to be at a lower flow rate than what it used to be. That's something that I read in an article whenever they were talking about shutting down the production, because they don't have anywhere to put the oil. Like, all of their facilities that hold oil are full and they're not shipping it out of there. So they just have to turn the pumps off. And what I read is that the process to shut the pumping down causes permanent damage to the oil field. And it'll never be able to pump out at the same rates again. I don't really know what that means. I don't know the exact process involved. What we're dealing with right now with the high fuel prices, I think that these fuel prices right now at this moment will be considered cheap 6 months from now. Maybe even a month from now, these prices might be considered cheap if we don't go in a different direction real fast. We have the US government that keeps coming out and trying to calm the markets by making up crap. Just coming out and saying, yeah, we've already won the war. The war's going to be over in like 2 days. They come out, they just keep coming out and saying that kind of BS. It's not true. It's just complete fictitious nonsense. At the same time that they're telling people we've already won the war and the war is going to be over in a day or two, they are putting things into motion that are going to take weeks or months to happen. Like starting to move ground troops into the area. They're starting to, I've heard about a lot of troops getting notifications that they're going to be deploying. It's not just, I think that we have somewhere, what I've heard is we have about 75,000 troops in that area right now. I think we just recently moved in around 5 or 10,000 troops with the Marine Expeditionary Unit and the 82nd, and I can't remember what all units were moved over there, but we already had a lot of troops in the region. We have a lot of troops that are just stationed in that region. And I've been hearing a lot of rumors about deployment orders being given. Troops are, getting prepared to deploy to the Middle East. It looks like we're going to have a massive ground war in Iran. And it could take several weeks or months for them to build up all the supply lines and move the troops into the region before we can even start the land invasion. You can send special operations units over to Iran in under 24 hours, but you can't send over 200,000 troops into that region in 24 hours or 2 or 3 days. It takes a massive supply line to be able to feed, house, clothe, medical care, sewage treatment. There's that many people requires a huge infrastructure to move with them. That's something that takes a lot of time to move all of those resources into the area. I hope that doesn't happen. If we do a large-scale ground war in Iran, I think that there's a high probability we're going to have a draft. We're going to have a military draft in the United States. Very, very good probability. And I think that's the reason all of our allies are telling us that they're not getting involved, is because they see the direction that this is going, and they don't want to get stuck in a ground war against Iran. They don't want to get drawn into this war that we're starting over there and be stuck there for, 10, 20 years. Anyway, I could talk forever about this. And this is supposed to be a load board video, so we've wrapped up that stuff. And I think I've talked for an hour after the load board video ended. So anyway, have a good one, and I don't know. We'll see if I might do some more load board videos this week. I need to wrap up a bunch of things around the house that I got going on. I still haven't finalized my taxes. I've been working on that since I've been back at the house. It's pretty much done, but I'm still trying to find... I haven't finalized it yet because I'm trying to find some more tax write-offs. I'm still trying to find some receipts. I'm trying to figure some stuff out. I want to get that, tax payment down as low as possible. So yeah. So anyway, my car is supposed to be in the shop for about a week getting fixed. So I'm starting to look for a load, and I'm going to start getting everything prepped, and I'm going to try to find a load that picks up Monday of next week or later. The car should be resolved by then. I'm really surprised that Landstar trailer utilization has not hit me up yet. I'm over the 10 or 11 day mark, whatever it is. And they usually steal my trailer. Like I pissed them off so much that like as soon as my 10 or 11 days is up, whatever their time limit is, like the instant that it's up, I usually get an email from them telling me that there's somebody on the way to take the trailer. So I'm over that, and I haven't gotten a call from them yet, which is kind of weirding me out. So maybe the tracking device on the trailer is not working properly. I've had that happen in the past where the little tracking device on the trailer doesn't update and tell them where the trailer's at. So they may think that the trailer's in, Olathe, Kansas, where my load ended, or they may think it's still in Portland or something. So maybe it's not part of their tracking network, and that's the reason they're not harassing me about the trailer. But I want to get a load booked as soon as possible so I don't have to be stuck for another 2 or 4 weeks trying to get a trailer. So anyway, also, I just realized that my medical is up basically at the end of this month. So I'm going to have to go get a new medical exam done before I go back out over the road, because my medical exam is going to expire about 3 or 4 weeks after. It expires about a month from now. So I need to get that done before I go back out over the road. Otherwise, I'll just have to try to find a place out over the road to get it done. I don't want to deal with that. I try to avoid getting my medical exam done at any place that does trucker medical exams because they are so shady. I go to places that truck drivers don't get medical exams done, and I don't have to deal with the absolute crazy nonsense that the medical examiners, that all they do every day is trucker medical exams, and they have this process and procedure that they go through, and they have certain things that they're gonna make you do to get them some extra money, extra tests that they make you do and stuff like that. I avoid trucker medical places to avoid all that crap. But anyway, that's pretty much the video. Let's wrap it up there, and hope you're having a good one. Be careful what parts of the country you go to. Be aware of the fuel prices. Don't get, taken by surprise whenever you're buying fuel for $5 a gallon in the middle of the country and you're like, oh, that's a good paying load going to Portland. And then you drive out to Portland and then you're like, oh my God, fuel is $8 a gallon. That's $3 a gallon more than the central part of the country. What the hell? That's going to cost me an extra, that's 14, we'll say 15 for easy math, times 3. That's going to cost you an extra 45 cents a mile. That fuel cost is going to be an extra 45 cents a mile. That's a lot of money. So, yeah, don't get caught by surprise. Pay attention to what's going on with the fuel prices, pay attention to the markets, and you could take some really big losses if you're not paying attention to what's going on. Getting into an area where there's $8 a gallon fuel prices and you're forced to pay for fuel there, that can wipe out all your profits for the month right there. So anyway, have a good one. Bye.